Hey family. My voice is still hoarse because I have been talking, doing some live streams. And it's still early. How y'all doing? I can hear so. Okay, just coming up in here because I came across a video. I came across a video, okay, addressing someone who is apparently of Somali descent. Um, yeah, and it just happened to be someone who I noticed that person as someone who has been very, very cool with me and supportive of my channel. But I did notice that I have not, I haven't, I realized that I haven't really seen their presence on my channels, you know. Uh, and And that's cool because we can't all be up in here like that. I understand that, but now it's making me wonder: could that have something to do with why I haven't really seen that person around? Them being of Somali descent, and not just so much them being of Somali descent, but perhaps they've seen my videos like on Rhoda Osman. Perhaps the person saw my, and I'm not trying to put them on spot. I'm not going to say their name or anything. Because there's also another person I know who, and this is a brother, was supportive of my channel. And I believe that he may not be of Somali descent, but I do believe because I've yeah, I know he's let it be known to me that he is of predominantly Y-DNA haplogroup E1B1B. Okay, and of course E1B1B is not just Somalia, but it's that's the haplogroup or the Y paternal haplogroup, Y-DNA haplogroup that is prominent of the Somali people, E1B1B. Yeah, in fact, let me see. Hold on. Now I use, I know that there are other, it's yeah, I still say E1B1B. I know that it can also be, EM215, but I'm just going to use what I'm used to using, E1B1B. And I'm talking about the Y DNA haplogroup or the paternal haplogroup, E1B1B, or also, E3B. Okay. And of course, we know that there are various subclades. Okay. There are subclades, E1B1B. And I'm just going to, yeah. And just give you a wiki quickie, E1B1B, formerly known as E3B, is a major human Y chromosome DNA haplogroup, and also EM215 has two basal branches, EM35 and EM281. Now, EM35 is primarily distributed in North Africa and the Horn of Africa and occurs at moderate frequencies in the Middle East, Europe, and Southern Africa. And EM281, okay, which is a basal branch of E1B1B, occurs at low frequency in Ethiopia. Okay, so yeah. Now, like I said, usually we think Ethiopia, Somalia, Eritrea, we think Cushitic. And I'm not saying that they aren't. They don't. I'm not going to say that they don't have any connection to Kush, but in Kush is Hamitic, whereas Esau is Shemitic. And if you notice, even though they say that they're, you'll hear that they're Cushitic people, like descendants of Ham, you'll also hear them being referenced. You'll also hear some of them being referenced as being Shemitic. Okay, but like I said, the descendants of Esau, who became the Edomites, they have mixed in with various different groups of people who happen to be in power, including the ancestors or the indigenous Hamitic people who became the what we know now as the Egyptians, the ancient Egyptians. Okay, and I believe that and of course the Egyptians, descendants of Ham, more specifically Mitzrayim, but also Cush. Okay, yeah, I believe that the land of Kemet was not just established by Mitzrayim, but also Cush. Okay, Yeah. Now I know that Kush has become synonymous with Ethiopia, but understand at one time Ethiopia, that they use that term to describe much of Africa, not just that area in the Horn of Africa. In fact, to the west, the Atlantic Ocean, on the west coast of Africa, it used to be called the Ethiopian Ocean, just for the north. But anyways, yeah. Um, and I may go into detail even more so on why I believe E1B1B, and I'm not the only one. Yeah, I believe also Benaya Israel also believe E1B1B, and it makes perfect sense when you really look at it, especially if you believe that Jacob um, would represent Y DNA haplogroup E1B1A. It would make sense. They're twins. It would make sense. It would make it. And I'm not the only one up in here. Some people believe, well, it could be Ishmael, E1B1B could be Ishmael. No, I believe it makes sense, E1B1B, because Ishmael was not twin to Jacob or brother to Jacob. Ishmael was what, uncle? Yeah, uncle. It would make sense that E1B1B would be Esau. And also, I'm looking at certain things in history, like with the Turks. I'm looking at things through history as well, and it makes perfect sense. Okay, and also I'm looking at names. I'm looking at language. I'm looking at, yeah. However, yeah. Now as we know, Esau, there's an animosity that Esau had an animosity, and if you don't know of the book of Genesis and what went down between Jacob and his brother Esau, and also the prophecy regarding the twins, and what was told to what was told the angel, I believe, or Yahuwah through the angel, I believe, told to Rebecca, mother of Jacob and Esau, the prophecy. And yeah, yeah, and then also about the animosity that although I believe before Esau's death, he made amends with his brother, yet and still, yeah, yet and still, Edom, Esau's name being changed to Edom, as Jacob's name was changed to Israel, or Yasharel, I'd rather say. Um, yeah, we know that the descendants of Esau, or the Edomites, there has been, some animosity. There has been some animosity, right? Um, and just talking about Esau, the individual, the Bible said that Yah hated Esau, but that was talking about Esau, the individual, and that had more to do with his ways, not just about how he was born, because remember, they are still descendants of Abraham. Abraham, who was a friend of the Most High Yah. Okay, so why would Abraham have a demon seed? You know what I'm saying, or an evil seed? I mean, you got to really think about it. And for those who believe that Esau was the white man, I do not believe that. I do not believe. Yeah, has Esau mixed in with different people, if you want to say different races, nationalities? Yeah, and we can take that back from the very beginning. He had a Horite wife, and I've talked about the Horites. He had an Ishmaelite wife. Well, Ishmael was of his people, but yeah, and he blended in with the Canaanites, and I believe the Canaanites, the original descendants of Canaan, were black as well. Although we know that over time and eventually there has been some mixing. We know that, but still, I don't believe that that Esau wasn't originally white, regardless. Um, yeah, I don't believe that, and I do believe that there are some descendants of Esau who would still be put in a racial categorization of black, even Negro, even. Now, I'm not necessarily talking about the Somali people, but yeah, this is why this is kind of touchy for me. But I do believe, even in sub-Saharan West Africa, I believe that there are descendants of Esau. Now that is something I just can't quite Hey, Miss Cardio Queen. Good morning. I can't, because I can't say that I feel as solid on that because I can't say that I know what haplogroup that they may belong to, because you have some people, and I believe, I believe there's groups of people in sub-Saharan West Africa, even. I'm talking Nigeria, even, who may look just like us. Okay. Okay, they would definitely, I know, be put in the category, the racial categorization, which is just basically going by phenotype. They would definitely be put in the category of uh, Negroid, although I know that's an outdated term, but if you understand why I'm saying that. And somebody, posted Lex Will, YouTuber Lex Will, kind of, I feel that that's what he was also kind of hinting on in mentioning like Benin um, and understand, my DNA results show some Benin, followed by, of course, Nigeria is number one, and I think Benin is number two. So who knows? you know, who knows what may exactly be in my DNA? You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Uh, but yeah, and I read the scriptures like in Psalm 83 and talking about those who would form a confederacy against Yasharel, against Yah's people, Yasharel, those who have been, and the reason that Yasharel you have been chosen to represent, it is not just because of DNA. It's not just, well, it is, but it wasn't originally about, it was about the covenant or the friendship that the Most High had with Abraham, who was a just, faithful man. The same could not necessarily be said about his father, or Abraham's father, Terah, right? Okay, so this isn't just about, the bad seed. If you understand what I'm saying. Yeah. All right. And so what I'm saying, but anyways, now although it was said that I hated Esau, particularly Esau, now that perhaps was because of things he did more specifically, just like you had Cain and Abel, are we supposed to abhor? Okay, I'll just say abhor to keep from saying the H word, because I don't know certain words. Yeah, YouTube's fishy about. Yeah, so am I saying that we should abhor or yeah, well, despite what was said more specifically about Esau, the individual, and how y'all felt about him, and yeah, I know we're taught, oh, God loves everybody. No, no, where did you get that? I believe everybody can be loved, by the way, but it did clearly say, how he felt about Esau, but that was the individual, right? That was the individual. But what does it say about, okay, what are we supposed to, how are we supposed to feel about Esau or descendants of Esau or the Edomites? And also, there's like, when I think of Edom also today, more so what's representing Edom, it's more about a mindset, because you know what I'm saying? It's also, yeah, there's Esau, who was born Esau and named Esau, and then there's Edom. You know what I'm saying? Not to say they're just Edomite in spirit, but yeah, I acknowledge lineage, but I'm just saying I think that it's more about also a mindset, because those who definitely represent Edom, the kingdom of Edom, just like you can represent the kingdom of Rome and not be Roman, but you can represent the Roman Empire. And I think those who represent Edom, the Edomite mindset today, or the kingdom of Edom, if you will, which is really a continuation of Rome. They are not necessarily the Somali people. Okay? But I'm saying there may be, like, also, and in me making my live stream and talking about this is also like maybe to, with hopes of reaching those who may be descendants of Esau. And maybe like, why do I hate, maybe this is something deeper, this animosity. And maybe they can realize, like, let's say if I have an animosity against a certain group of people or a certain family, it may have something to do with what's been embedded in my head by my ancestors about this family. Like you think the Hatfield versus the McCoys, like, what was that? Are they like this hillbilly family? I mean, but this was real. The feud that went on for like generations, the Hatfields versus McCoys. It could be about something that's, that's just been passed down. Uh, uh, yeah. It could have been from the parents. It could have been, but what I'm saying, maybe it goes even further back. I'm not necessarily saying, oh, they're just born automatically with this 8 for for Jacob for E1B1A. I'm not saying that. I'm saying like there could have been something passed down that you just don't realize that goes further back than even your parents. That's what I'm trying to say. But look at here. Okay, let me share the scriptures. Let me do a screen share. Okay. And I can't, I have nothing against that person who have been very, very supportive of my channel and very, you know what I'm saying? Or neither, because there's two specific people who I'm thinking of. There was a brother and a sister. And yes, I say brother and sister. Even if we are not, you know what I'm saying? Even if, let's say, we both may not represent Yasharel, but I mean, we all may not be of the same, but we are still descendants of Abraham, right? Still, regardless. But yeah, what does it say? Now, I know some of y'all may not like me, pointing this out, but look, if we're going to go to the scriptures, let's not overlook. Okay. Now we're in Deuteronomy here. Deuteronomy chapter 23. I hope I'm right. I hope I'm in the right place. Okay, let's read down. Let's go down to verse 7. Deuteronomy chapter 23, verse 7. Now, what does it say here, y'all? It says, thou shalt not abhor or hate an Edomite, for he is thy brother. For he is thy brother. It even says, goes further. Yeah, so it has to remind us. Remember, for he is thy brother. Edomite, thou shalt not abhor an Edomite, for he is thy brother. But it goes further. Thou shalt not abhor an Egyptian. Now, of course, we know that they weren't initially called Egyptians. This is a translation. Egyptian is a Grecian word. But thou shalt not hate a descendant of Mitzrayim or a descendant of Cush. Okay, thou shalt not hate. So this is we know that Egypt, Mitzrayim, and Cush, we do know that they are descendants of Ham. And why does it say thou shalt? It's just reminding us to give us, for when we need to, with Esau or Edom, we got to remember that he is thy brother. And this is saying Edomite. Now, Esau had already been dead by this time. So this is also not just talking about Esau, regardless of how the Most High felt about Esau, the individual. They're talking about Edomite, for they're talking about this nation. His nation, the men, his descendants, he is thy brother. Don't forget. Esau was already dead. So it's talking about Esau's descendants. It's being more male specific. But think Y DNA. Okay? Think Y paternal DNA. For thou shalt not abhor an Edomite, for he is thy brother. And also we think of men as leading, the women included. Thou shalt not abhor an Egyptian. Now, the reason it gets for this, because although the Hamitic people, although they are not our brother, even if we are the same race, okay, even if the white man, the colonizers would put us in the same racial category, we are still, it says, thou shalt not abhor an Egyptian or a Kemetic person, okay, whether they be from Cush, Mitzrayim. So I would think that that'll also include Put. I know some people, well, what about Canaan? Well, I'm sure them as well. Yeah. Thou shalt not abhor an Egyptian because thou wast a stranger in his land. Because one time, and you got to remember, there was that time. Okay, hold on. Let me find the exact scriptures. I may have to do a little research. Let me find the exact scripture. Okay, so that would represent Joseph reuniting with his father, right? I just want, I want to get the right scriptures, the exact scriptures in Genesis. I know it's in Genesis. Okay, so is it Genesis 46? Now, as you know, excuse me, as you know, remember Joseph was sold by his own brothers. See, that's another thing too. By his own brothers, because this is family. This is family feuding here. Joseph was sold. This might have been the beginning of slavery, right? Joseph was sold by his own brothers. Okay. His other brothers, definitely at least 10 of them. Y'all know about little Benjamin, but his own brothers sold him off into slavery out of jealousy, out of hatred, right? Now, these were his own brothers, but he still eventually forgave them. They forgave, and they, were once again loving him. Well, there was nothing for them to forgive on him, but they did sell him into slavery. And that could have, that's really bad. But Joseph, with it was obviously all of this worked out according to Yah's will, and Joseph ended up being in a powerful position amongst the, he was next to Pharaoh. Obviously he had to be able to pass for it, because I don't think they would have taken him kindly if he was so different looking. Just something to think about. This man in power leading, this, he looked like that, well, I don't know if that mattered as much, but being that the Most High, with the spirit of the Most High, Joseph was able to interpret dreams, more specifically Pharaoh's dreams, helped them through the famine that hit, and it's also helped Egypt become a great world power, being that they, I'm sure, able to help other lands come into Egypt for, assistance, for food. Yeah. And it's helped Egypt come to greatness and or become an even greater empire. And so Pharaoh was very much loved, this pleased the Pharaoh, of course. And so hold on. So what happened after, as you know, after, okay, let me see. Let me go down to, I'm trying to find, I guess am I in the right? I hope I'm in the right. I might not be in the right book. No. I think I'm in the wrong. Yeah, Genesis 46. Let me see. I'm trying to get the exact. Maybe it's Genesis 45. Maybe it's the chapter before. Uh, okay. Yeah, Genesis chapter 45. Let me see. Yeah, this is after he's reunited with his family, with his brothers, and eventually his father, who loved him very much, Joseph, that is. And you gotta understand, yeah, so all of the brothers that betrayed him, this included Judah. Judah, yeah, Judah, and we definitely, the what is now the United States, we definitely believe we're descendants of Judah, but Judah was also a participant in selling his own brother into slavery. Yeah, okay. And he fell upon Benjamin's brother's neck, his brother Benjamin's neck, and wept. I'm reading from verse. Okay. Um, Let me see. What should I start reading from? Yeah, now they didn't know that Joseph was, they didn't know that that was Joseph, their brother, that was in this position. You know, that this, they didn't know because many years had passed. They didn't know that this was Joseph who's in this high position. They sold him as a slave to come, and now he's like this high ranking, next to Pharaoh in power. And Jason said, but they couldn't recognize him. They thought he was another one. So that's another thing too. This is another reason why, why Caucasian, they have to try to claim the Egyptians, because they know that Joseph and Moses, if they were able to pass and be mistaken for Egyptians, they know that they had to look similar. And saying that the ancient Egyptians were Caucasian, yeah, that's a way of also being able to claim the descendants of Israel or Yasharel. Okay. Yeah, it's a good point that you're pointing out where punt is. I'm looking, I can't help but kind of, yeah, I believe that they may be a combination of, yeah, because I also, one minute I heard that punt is Libya, and that's another, the descendants of Punt, another son of Ham, rather, another son of Cam or Ham. Then I hear like that's all I'm wondering too, because the Moors have been descendants of Punt, but I just know that Esau's descendants, Edomites, have blended in, including with the quote unquote Egyptians. Yeah, all in the Horn of Africa. What is now considered the Horn of Africa in the so-called Middle East. Let me see. From chapter 45, verse 4. And Joseph said unto his brethren, come near to me, I pray you. And they came near. Now understand, they still don't know this, they brother. And he said, I am Joseph, your brother, whom you sold into Egypt. Now therefore, now I can imagine how surprised they were. Now therefore, be not grieved nor angry with yourselves that ye sold me hither. For God, I'm just read as is, although I shouldn't be saying God, I should be saying Elohim. But for God did send me before you to preserve life. So Joseph understand what happened to him, even in being sold to the Egyptians, it was for Yah's will. Okay. And he said, he sent me before you to preserve life, because he was able to help through the famine and Yah giving him, through Yah's spirit, him interpreting dreams. Okay. Verse 6, for these 2 years hath the famine been in the land, and yet there are 5 years in which there shall neither be earing nor harvest. And Yah sent me before you to preserve you a posterity in the earth, and to save your lives by a great deliverance. So now it was not you that sent me hither, but Elohim, or Yahuwah. He hath made me a father to Pharaoh, and lord of all his house, and a ruler throughout all the land of Egypt. Haste ye, and go up to my father, and say unto him, Thus saith thy son Joseph, God hath made me lord of all Egypt. Come down unto me, tarry not, and thou shalt dwell in the land of Goshen, and thou shalt be near unto me, thou and thy children, and thy children's children, and thy flocks, and thy herd, and all that thou hast. And there will I nourish thee. For yet there are 5 years of famine, lest thou and thy household and all that thou hast come to poverty. Okay, let me see. I'm trying to, let me drop to verse 16. And the fame thereof was heard in Pharaoh's house, saying, Joseph's brethren are come, and it pleased Pharaoh well. It pleased Pharaoh. Now this was a Kemetic man. It pleased Pharaoh well, and his servants. And Pharaoh said unto Joseph, Say unto thy brethren, This do ye, lade your beasts, and go, get you unto the land of Canaan, and take your father and your households, and come unto me, and I will give you the good of the land of Egypt, and ye shall eat the fat of the land. Now thou art commanded, this do ye, take ye wagons, out of the land of Egypt, for your little ones, for your wives, and bring your father, and come. Also regard not your stuff, for the good of all the land of Egypt is yours. And the children of Israel did so, and Joseph gave them wagons according to the commandment of Pharaoh, and gave them provision for the way. To all of them he gave each man changes of raiment or clothes. They got some new gears, new clothes. But to give Benjamin, he gave 300 pieces of silver and 5 changes of raiment. So you see that, yeah, you see the Pharaoh, he was like, yeah, get your whole family, bring them, bring them into the land. My land is your land. Now, they were not of the same lineage. The Egyptians, we know, the Pharaoh was Kemetic. They were not of the same lineage. So this is, yeah. Now, of course, this was hundreds of years before. This was before Moses, before the time of Moses. See, there was a new Pharaoh that didn't remember Joseph, doesn't know what Joseph, supposedly. He didn't know, he ain't know Joseph. Yes, I do believe that there were instigators, perhaps of Edomite descent. But, yeah, but as you can see, so this explains why, this is why it says here in Deuteronomy 23, verse 7, thou shalt not abhor an Edomite, reminding us, for he is thy brother. And then it says, thou shalt not abhor an Egyptian. Now, Egyptian is the word they use here, or Hamitic, because thou wast a stranger in his land, in the land of Goshen. And for years, we can't forget that. Now, yeah, eventually, they end up doing us wrong. The Hamitic, perhaps they were instigators. And they got their payment for that. They had their payment. That's the thing too. You think these land, just like what it said would happen with Babylon, where it is what was Babylon was in the country of Iraq. And it said that it would be a desolation. Hold on, Babylon today, the scripture said that it would be a desolation. And look at, and what is it today? Babylon, Iraq today. That area that was Babylon, just like it said, pretty much uninhabited desolation, which was once once a mighty kingdom, is now just ruins for the most part, even though they've been trying to rebuild it, making it a tourist attraction. Saddam Hussein tried to, ain't nothing happening. Okay. He said he was going to rebuild Babylon, ain't happening. Okay. Yeah, it's a Babylon today, but it represents something different today. But whatever these other people have done wrong, a lot of these other groups, yeah, you best believe, they're gonna pay their price. But what I'm saying is, yeah, it says we still got to remember Esau is still a descendant of Abraham. This is not a case of the bad seed, the demon seed. Yeah, there's prophecy from the time Esau was, in the womb, but also, now this is something that's kind of debatable with some people, but we know Job, the book of Job. And just go to, the faithful man Job, who was tested. Now, some of y'all may disagree because I've seen some people disputing over this. But it is very much believed that Job was not a descendant of Yasharel, but a descendant of Edom. Ooh. Now, I can't say that I've read the book of Job, of course. I can't say that I've actually found proof. There are some people who may have done videos. I do recall seeing videos on this, discussions on this. Some people don't agree. It just says that there was a man living in the land of Uz whose name was Job. That man was perfect and upright and one that feared Yahuwah and eschewed evil. So he was a good, faithful man. Now, it makes sense that, yeah, I could easily believe that he was a descendant of Edom. It doesn't necessarily say, but consider his neighbors, his friends, they happen to be Edomites, right? Okay, let me just go. I'm gonna do an AI overview because I know some people have, and I can't say that I'm sure, because it doesn't exactly say, but it does. It would make sense. I could, if I were to guess. Okay, so I just went on, typed in AI overview. The biblical figure Job is widely considered to be an Edomite, or at least from the region of Edom, based on the book's geographical references. He is said to have lived in the land of Uz, which is associated with Edom in the Bible, and his friends are identified as having Edomite origins. Yeah, let me get a little more information. Geographical clues. Job lived in the land of Uz, and Lamentations 4:21 specifically links Uz to Edom, making it likely that Job was from that area, and he had Edomite friends. Job's three friends, particularly Eliphaz the Temanite, remember we learned about Teman, Eliphaz the Temanite, are described as being from Edom or its related territories. Okay, now it says Septuagint connection. An ancient Greek translation of the Bible, the Septuagint, identifies Job with Jobab, a king of Edom, and I can't say that I know with that, and provides a genealogy connecting him to Esau. And also non-Israelite status. The book portrays Job as a non-Israelite, but one who worships the true God, which fits the potential Edomite background, as Edom was descended from Esau, the brother of Jacob. Okay. Yeah. So, I mean, I know some of y'all may not agree with me. I can imagine a video coming or somebody. Yeah. Because I know I've seen people kind of debating, just like over who's another one? Ruth. Was she Moabite? Was she, Ruth and Rahab, who are maternal ancestors of the Messiah, Yahushua HaMashiach. Rahab believed to be, or was she said to be, Canaanite. And even like we talk about Canaanites, remember Bathsheba, remember Uriah, who David, when he sinned in having his loyal soldier Uriah killed because he wanted to be with his woman Bathsheba. Uriah was a Hittite, but he killed, and David and having him killed. Yeah, of course, obviously this displeased the Most High and him get, although this was a Hittite, but he was still a loyal soldier. He had him purposely like put in front lines in battle so that he could be killed. And although, yes, King David was overall a very good man, but he did something really bad at one time. And he was punished for that. Okay. So so I'm just making the point. Let me see y'all comments. Yeah, I'm just making the point. I'm not, when I talked about the Somali E1B1B and E1B1A, it was not about me trying to I'm not feeding into this FBA versus tether rhetoric. It was kind of difficult for me, but I had to take the opportunity to talk about this because we're going to have to eventually talk about this. It gives us an understanding, like my people, more specifically Yasharel more specifically in the Western world. Well, not just the Western world, but it gives us, and when we know this, it kind of gives us an understanding of history, and okay, it makes you better understand. Now, just as Yah worked through certain groups of people, I believe Satan will choose people to work through. But is it just about how we're born? Is it just about it was with Yah choosing Yasharel. This was about his friendship, his bond, his connection with the faithful, loyal, obedient Abraham, who proved his faith. This is about a covenant. It's not just about what your DNA, this supremacist talk that's just based on genealogy and nothing else. So don't get me wrong, there are certain blessings and curses that may be passed down, but it doesn't mean nothing when even regardless of who you come from, when you're disobedient, that's going to automatically bring curses. Obedience brings curses. Disobedience brings curses. So so just as Yah has chosen people, I'm pretty sure Satan, well, you know what, I'm gonna choose these people, or I'm a and I'm not trying to put you down, but him seeing that there was already this animosity that Esau had against Jacob, even though in the end, Esau trying to hunt down Jacob, wanted to kill him because he felt he stole something from him, even though he sold away his birthright. So for years he was, Jacob had to go into hiding, and Esau trying to hunt him down. But if you do recall, let me see. Let me get the exact scriptures. When they reconcile. Is that Genesis 33? Might as well go to the New International Version. Says in the New International Version, 33, Genesis 33, let me see. Jacob looked up, and there was Esau coming with his 400 men. So he divided the children among Leah, Rachel, and the 2 female servants. He put the female servants and their children in front, Leah and her children next, and Rachel and Joseph in the rear. He himself went on ahead and bowed down to the ground 7 times as he approached his brother. Now remember, he had been in hiding for his brother for years, because his brother Esau, whose name was changed to Edom, and Jacob's name changed to Yasharel, or Israel. You know, but now, they're meeting up again. Yeah, so he himself, Jacob, went on ahead and bowed down to the ground 7 times as he approached his brother. But Esau ran to meet Jacob and embraced him. He threw his arms around his neck and kissed him, and they wept. Then Esau looked up and saw the women and children. "Who are these with you?" he asked. Jacob answered, "They are the children Yah has graciously given your servant." Then it makes me want to cry. I'm actually getting kind of teary-eyed reading it. Then the female servants and their children approached and bowed down. Next, Leah and her children came and bowed down. Last of all came Joseph and Rachel, and they bowed down. Esau asked, "What's the meaning of all these flocks and herds I met?" "To find favor in your eyes, my lord," he said. But Esau said, "I already have plenty, my brother. Keep what you have for yourself." "No, please," said Jacob. "If I have found favor in your eyes, accept this gift from me. For to see your face is like seeing the face of God. Now that you have received me favorably, please accept the present that was brought to you. For God has been gracious to me, and I have all I need." And because Jacob insisted, Esau accepted it. Then Esau said, "Let us be on our way. I'll accompany you." But Jacob said unto him, "My Lord knows that the children are tender, and that I must care for the ewes and cows that are nursing their young. If they are driven hard just one day, all the animals will die. So let my Lord go on ahead of his servant while I move along slowly at the pace of the flocks and herds before me, and the pace of the children, until I come to my Lord in Seir." Seir, where Esau was. Esau said, "Then let me leave some of my men with you." "But why do that?" Jacob asked. "Just let me find favor in the eyes of my Lord." So that day Esau started on his way back to Seir. Remember, where Seir is. Jacob, however, went to Succoth, where he built a place for himself and made shelters for his livestock. That is why the place is called Succoth. Okay. So you see here, in the end, Jacob and Esau, they make amends. Now, whether or not Esau, whose name was changed to Edom, reconciled his, or made amends with the Most High Yah, I don't know. But I can't say. But there is hope. There is hope. Okay. And yeah. So this is just something to consider. This is not about me trying to get us to abhor, okay, other people. But I do think it's important that we acknowledge and it actually make a real and when you really understand what delineate means. What does delineate actually mean? To delineate, okay, verb, describe or portray something precisely. That's all delineation means. It's not necessarily divestment, because that's how they're talking. FBA talking like some divestments. Don't get me wrong, the Bible do say we have to be ye separate, but you got to understand what's really why that's said and what's meant. Yeah, and we are not to be a part of the world in that sense. But delineate is just basically when you make a clarification. To delineate from something, it means to describe, outline, portray something with precision and clarity, either by drawing its physical boundary, like tracing a map, or by explaining its characteristics in words, like defining terms. So yes, we do need to, in talking about different groups of people, I do think that we should make a delineation, because it gives us a better understanding. It can also give you a better appreciation and respect, perhaps, if you are to respect the culture when you have a better understanding. Sometimes I think when we just seen everybody all the same, this whole colorblind mentality, no. Because then you're going to expect everybody to be just like you, and you're going to be disappointed when you see that they're not like you. You think just because everybody look like you, or somebody look like you, or you look similar to each other, or you have, they have boxed us all together as black people with sinister purposes. But we are different. We are, and that's okay. That's okay. It's okay to make a delineation. But when you put these, trying to put on pedestals, now, yes, we are, as Yasharel, Yah's chosen people. That ain't about just, that was about Abraham. We are Yah's chosen people. But with that, now, it ain't just about knowing who you are. With that, we got to understand there comes a responsibility. And we are supposed to be a light to the other nations. So when y'all are participating, I'm not talking about y'all, when you're participating with all this, that's bad. Because, with all this unnecessary division or just roasting, that ain't good. In fact, that's even worse for us, especially when we have that responsibility. We have that. I'm not saying that they have no responsibility, but we definitely supposed to know better. When you claiming that our culture represent roasting, and that's all, and that's all that this is not. See, I was talking about this, and I'm going to continue to talk about Esau and Edom and the kingdoms established or influenced by Edom to give you an understanding. And maybe, hopefully, they can, if they can put down their pride, they can also, because we got to put down this pride. Maybe they can understand, like, why is it that at this site, somalispot.com, why is it that they got, because this is something that I have noticed. I have seen, I've been at different sites. And yeah, there's gonna always be that little prejudice, or people. Anytime there's people feeling they different. Just like I was talking with the United States alone. Those black folks who migrated to the north thinking they better than those in the south, and perhaps vice versa. And the people of the south perhaps think people who migrate to the north think they bougie. Then there's always gonna be that. But I will say, of all different sites that I've, because I'm a reader, I like reading comments, seeing what different people think and all that. And when I've been to sites like, there's sites where, what's the one most, like, a lot of people direct African descent visit? Oh gosh. But then, but I noticed, I didn't see the animosity. I noticed this animosity with Somali, but that could just be one site, just like we have certain channels up in here claim they represent biracials and stuff. That's just one channel. They, of course, they don't represent everybody, or even, I'm talking about in rhetoric representing. Yeah, but what could this be about? Is it just about something in their DNA? Or could it be something much deeper, something that could have been passed down and they don't even realize? I'm talking about, something that may have been told to their parents, but their parents, and coming from their parents' and something that maybe goes far back. Something to consider. I can't hold back the information that I have. I mean, I've held it back long enough. And I got to go into that. I have to go into that. I have to go into the Turks. I have to go. I got it. I feel like I'm supposed to go further in talking about, E1B1B, if you will. But it's not just about that. What you say? Why? Why what? I don't know exactly what you're asking. Why? How you doing, FBA ally? Because it maybe gives you a better understanding. Because it aren't, huh? What I know black people don't if you're talking black Americans, I know black quote unquote black people don't hate them. I know this. In fact, and this is something I've also had to explain to those of more direct African descent, we have always, I know being a young person in the 90s, a baby in the child of the 70s and 80s, and a young person in the 90s. I know how, we always would be giving big ups to Africa and, anything we thought. Yeah, we may have had it wrong, thinking everybody in Africa wearing kente cloths speak Swahili and riding elephants. We may not have been exact, but I know being that I was a young person, I became an adult in the early 90s. And I remember it was during that time with X Clan and any and everything we saw as Afrocentric, Africa medallions, So yeah, of course it's hurtful when you find out that there are some of them who don't really like us. And yeah, I get it. I get it. Especially when we were all, Mother Africa. I know. Yeah, some of them don't. You know what? But I'm at a point, FBA, where I am, reconsidering. And this ain't about me. This ain't about no raccoon in that. But I don't feel that we should be calling ourselves black any longer. This ain't about no raccooning. This ain't about some if there is an agenda, it is more of a spiritual agenda, because I'm realizing first of all, did our ancestors call themselves? I'm talking about our ancient ancestors. Did they refer to themselves as black? Because you got to understand, what you call yourself, that's what you represent. And we are more than just melanin. Melanin is beautiful, but we have to be careful worshiping the creation rather, over the creator. The Bible wants us that. And it ain't about worshiping and calling yourself that. But people didn't identify just by the color. That's not how how people, period, in ancient times identified. And I understand, like, who was it? And we didn't originally tag ourselves as being black people. Now, it may have been used as an adjective, like in the Song of Solomon. Well, actually, that wasn't Solomon, but that was the Shulamite woman. I am black for the son of, yeah. It may have been used as an adjective, but we didn't describe ourselves as black. And that's the thing. That's embracing. That's what certain people, and when they decide to call us black, it was or label us as black, and they grouped us all together, regardless of our actual nationality, lineage, language, culture, whatever. These are black people, and it was all just based on phenotype. These are black or Negro or Moor, and they just, even if Moor didn't originally mean black, they changed it to mean just black. Sudan, it didn't originally mean black, but they changed to mean just black, even though now they're getting rid of the indigenous people of Sudan. When they called it, I realized, and looking, it was something more esoteric, not just about melanin. It was like putting a curse. We're white, holy, you're black, unholy. And the thing is, I have to consider this. How can those of us who, if we are to be a light to the other nations, now, I'm not talking about the false light, the Illuminati. I'm not talking about that. I'm not talking about those representing Lucifer, the false light. But if we are to be a light, and I ain't talking about light skin, because I see that there's a channel for like supposedly light skinned people where he's associating it all with melanin versus lack of melanin, which is ridiculous. But if we are to be a light, okay, enlightening to other nations, why would we be calling ourselves black? And I realized when we begin to embrace black. Now, yeah, we were being called Negro before and colored, but when we begin to around that period in the late 60s into the 70s, we began to embrace black. I looked at just looking at history, just looking at, and what really got me was that Black on Black documentary from 1968. And I was like, man, how do I define blackness? And let me tell you, I'm going to tell you, I loved, this is tough for me because I like calling myself black. I'm just being honest. I love calling myself black, but I know that that's about my pride, and the Bible warns about the pride. That I was raised black. My mama was in affiliation with the Panthers on the west side of Chicago. Like I say, born the same year as Fred Hampton, and we were only 15 minutes away, or at least driving, from where he was, where my family base was, where he was taken out. So understand, I was raised by a mother who was, all I knew was, and also me being born in that time, the early to mid 70s, we were definitely black and proud to be black. I have an uncle had the picture with the, with the Huey Newton picture where they sitting in the straw chair. My uncle had one of them pictures. But this was more so about my mom and the rest of my family, for the most part. So you're saying the same, right. So, I mean, I've been in this mindset, but over the more recent years, now I still reference to myself as black because it's habitual. It's still in my. That's why I found myself still talking about hip hop, still talking about, because I'm still passionate about black. But I am realizing even certain things with my mother, I'm coming to a certain realization. See, like I said, I understand people deciding to make these changes because if it's something spiritual or maybe even traumatic, even though you got to be careful when it's something traumatic. But with me, it's something more spiritual. A lot of these other people, I'm telling you, like Tariq Nasheed, this isn't his flip-flopping. This ain't about something spiritual. This is all financial. And it's also about, that's what I believe. And I believe that it's also about, for all we know, somebody could be being blackmailed, or that somebody could be, you know what I'm saying, where they have no choice. If you understand what I'm saying, like they shook hands with the devil or something. Yeah, even when we're talking about white folks, and that's a hard one for me. I ain't gonna front, but even in talking about white folks, and I have my beliefs on the origin of what may have caused the skin, to turn white. And, I do believe that this is caused by mutation. Many of them, their scientists will agree with that. But even so, even with that, regardless, we are supposed to be a light to the Gentiles. We are supposed to, we're going to have to put, it's difficult. It's hella difficult. But we're going to have to, put this pride aside. If you notice, the Bible never mentions pride or being proud in a positive manner, even though pride has been. And look at now, when you think pride now, when you hear the term pride now, look at what it's associated with now. You know what I'm talking about. Like if you get a pride t-shirt, if I was to walk down today, okay, back in the 70s you had a t-shirt said pride, they would have thought one thing, oh, pro-blackness. Now today, you think pride, what is it affiliated with? And see, the Bible says pride before the fall. So we're going to have to put some of this pride aside, myself included. And it's tough. It's tough. Especially, man, I was just watching something, even and with the Susan Powder, the Stop the Insanity. I remember I used to watch that. And at that time, I was skinny. I was just joking with my husband because I would have watched it last night, being that the night before I watched the documentary on her. But I found the whole Stop the Insanity. And I said, oh my goodness. I remember watching it. I wasn't even fat at that time, but I was, and I had my own apartment and everything by the time that aired. I had a baby too. But I remember I just would watch it because she was just it was kind of like, she was entertaining. I said, who would have thought that years later? Now I'm not saying I ever got to 260 pounds, but I'm just saying, who would have thought? I was joking with my husband. But when I was watching this, shoot, I was skinny and probably eating some popcorn or something, watching it, eating some ice cream or something, watching her with this. But anyways, I was watching a documentary on her that just was released not that long ago. If you remember that lady, Stop the Insanity. She was that bald-headed white lady when she was a white woman. Well, she was from Australia, come to find out, but just lived all her life in the United States. And she had the buzz cut. She dyed it. She had her hair really, really kind of like Annie Lennox from Eurythmics. Was really short and spike-like, and dyed platinum blonde, and she had dark eyebrows because her natural hair was dark. Yeah, it's kind of mind you, Jamie Lee Curtis. But yeah, ironically, this documentary was, I guess, put together by Jamie. It was the idea, or Jamie Lee Curtis was behind it, sponsored it, or whatever. Yeah, and learning about how they did her wrong. It just took her name, even took the right to her name. And yeah, you find out why she like just disappeared. She was like this infomercial queen, fitness guru, if you want to call it that. And she just, yeah. And despite my feelings about her being a lesbian and, and what would Joan Rivers do, whatever, I still felt bad for her. She's like, and she's a white woman, and she's on welfare. She's driving Uber now, and she was making $200 million. Like what? It was her, the books and all of that. She was able to make, and she's saying even in the height of her career, when she was able to sell $200 million in services, products, etc., through the infomercials and all, she only received $200,000 annually. That is, even though she made $200 million, but she, signed the contract, because being that she was a single mom at the time, husband had left her and everything, she signed a thinking things would be 50-50, things would be fair, things would be, yeah. And then when she said the person's name and the people who stabbed her in the back, I'm like, this is just bogus. I ain't gonna lie, I was getting mad. Of course, I'm seeing a woman cry, and she applied, at least she got proof for Social Security. Like, this don't make no sense. How could you be this greedy? And especially with all that I've been learning, of course, with all this that's going on, he's already with the P. Diddy, and, and don't get me wrong, I'm not defending P. Diddy, but it's like, okay, when we go, I just want everybody who is responsible, everybody who is like the Clive D, you know what I'm saying? Why, Yeah, so I took it upon myself to look up the name of the person. What she said his name was Jerry. I can't remember that stabbed her in the back. Sure enough, hold on. Maybe I should find what I'm talking about. I mean, maybe I can. What she said his name was Jerry Frankel. Jerry Frankel. Yeah, okay. Now this is what I'm talking about. I know I don't mean to get all off subject, but let me mention this. I don't know if y'all remember that the woman y'all remember that Stop the Insanity when you removed it. I remember that woman, right? Y'all remember this woman, right? Yeah, so she's Stop the Insanity. Yeah. Well, she's in her late 60s now. Wow. And I'm like, man, I remember just watching this commercial like in the air in my apartment with just my daughter. But yeah, but I couldn't help but feel for her because I did like her. She was on Arsenio Hall. She was the Fresh Prince of Bel Air. She was on talk shows, Jay Leno, and then she just like kind of disappeared, right? Yeah, so I looked up. Now, despite what, because she's a full on lesbian now, even though, well, she was married to a man twice, and, her first husband walked out on her and her two babies, even though she had babies 11 months apart. That's when she said she got fat, 260 pounds. And, so this also makes you debate whether people are actually born a certain way, right? As they claim. But let me not go into that. But yeah, so I said, they said his name is Jerry Frankel. I tried to find, I don't know. I know I said, but I tried to find out some background on him. But they didn't exactly say what is. But I said, let me type this in. He's in the Broadway and all. He was the person who came to her, let's make a deal, basically. Sure enough, I type in the name Frankel. Sure enough. So you know what I'm thinking. Like, man. So I'm sitting here like, I'll just leave it at that. So I'm like, yeah, and okay, and where's the guy? Yeah, he was in the Broadway and all that. So I'm like, I know, yeah, but he passed away. So I guess now it's okay, it's safe. So yeah, and she talked about how he told her, this guy told her, well, I own you. And when she said, she just went to him about the percentages, and he like, I own you. If you do a piano lessons, if you decide to do some piano lessons, like we gonna get this much. Yeah. So she said that when he put his finger in her face, she was like, if you don't get your effing finger out of my face, or I'm gonna bite it off. And yeah. So it looked like they may have even paid her own brother to go against. I don't know. But I'm like, dang, come on. If a person bringing in 200 million, you can't share that. You'll still be rich. Like, what's wrong with? So of course, I'm thinking, what's wrong with these people? Like, why? You know what I'm hinting at. Why must they own But I know I'm going to have to. And that, like what I talked about, those who are, Ashkenaz, they got 20%. So, it had me like thinking, I know that I'm not supposed to see a whole entire demographic, but I can't help but be like, but the thing is, she's talking about what would Joan do. And Joan Rivers was a wicked person herself. But anyways, maybe Susan Powder would be under the protection of Most High Yah if she knew of the Most High Yah. Maybe that would help prevent from these things happening. But it's sad because she's like driving Uber and yeah. So the first thing came to my head when she said she put him in check, and yeah, so they probably totally sabotaged her entire career. Or what they would call she became blackballed, if you will. You remember when I talked about with Monique? And I told nobody was hearing me. Now people want to talk. I said, I'm gonna tell you the real reason Monique was so-called blackballed. And I showed y'all the clip when she had Paul Mooney on the show talking about state and him talking about Satan worship. And then two, Monique, when she looked in the camera, when she had T-Boss from TLC on there, and they were talking about, and notice they didn't mention Pebbles. They didn't mention Pebbles. Oh yeah, and for those who claim I'm so just dark skinned, I only care about dark skinned black people. Oh yeah, I was someone who claimed to be a niece of Pebbles, or they thanked me for the series I did in her defense years ago. That got lots of views. The original upload in defense of Pebbles. But anyways, yeah, it's funny in that series. T-Boz, she ain't say a thing about Pebbles. Now, I'm not saying they didn't have a falling out. This was before they had the little TLC movie where they made Pebbles into the sole bad guy. But I noticed in that interview, which was before the TLC movie, they didn't say anything. When she was talking to Monique on that talk show, she didn't say anything about Pep. She was talking about Clive Davis, and she also mentioned LA, being an LA, LA babyface, not babyface, but LA Reid being linked with Clive. But the main name she said was Clive Davis. She talking about how Left Eye went, she was talking about she was gonna go with a baseball bat, and and so then Monique looked into the camera and she makes demands of Clive Davis and stuff. And I say that's what I believe. They're using that Lee Goddard guy that was supposedly behind Monsters Ball, Lee Daniels and Oprah and Tyler Perry to try to, but do you think it was just about them sabotaging Monique and, no. That's what I'm telling you. Because notice they were not talking about Monique being problematic before that. Did you not notice? She was straight up the go-to black woman for films and stuff. Won an Oscar. She got her own talk show. But yeah. Anyways, I know I'm getting off track. I'm just saying. Yeah, so it can be difficult. It can be very difficult, especially when you consider history and how we've been stabbed in the back, and but we are going to have to. I know it's like, why do we always have to be the ones, it seems, taking the higher road? It is what it is. If you want to, especially those who know that you are of Yasharel and you know this, then you got to know that there's a responsibility. It ain't just about knowing who we are as Yasharel. We knew who we were. We knew exactly who we were when we were taken into captivity and fell to sin. We knew who we were. We knew who we were when we decided to we knew exactly who we were when we decided to follow the other nations and worship idols, when we were supposed to be spreading the gospel to them, or being an example, or being a ray of light, real light, true light, not the false light, which ain't light. But how can we do this? Think about it. When you got to really consider what you call yourself, even your name, even what your name. That's why certain people, when they find out they're Yahshua, they, like in my family, they change the name even. So we're going to have to, hate wickedness, not people. So let me see. Go through your comments. Morning Cardio Queen, Mr. K. The she-bear in Somalia, which is where Somalis come from, has a very complex and nuanced history, especially as different ethnic groups, migrated and settled there. Yeah. Somalia is where ancient Put is at too. Yeah, this is the thing, because some say, that's the thing. We don't talk about what happened to the descendants of Put. We talk about Mitzrayim, Cush. I've been wondering, were the Moors, when we think Iberia and Northwest Africa, were the Moors, and you think Libya, were they of Put, or were they of Canaan? Could they have been, just descendants of Ephraim, Yasharel? That I know they was quote unquote black. I know that. Many people from Punt traded with ancient Egypt. Yeah. Yeah, we don't talk about Like even the civilization, the contributions of Punt, of Foot, of Punt. Exactly. Also, as the Berlin Conference created these artificial borders, which also misplaced and divided the indigenous ethnic groups across these artificial borders. Yeah, and I need to respond to somebody. Yeah, obviously they representing FBA. I'm not saying Black Americans. I'm saying FBA because they're like kind of left comment after comment after comment. And I told them I'm gonna have to remove some of them comments because no, not gonna be spamming my comment section because I know how these Tariq and Sheed followers do. I agree about the Berlin Conference. The European imperialists were brutal against African people and didn't care about the diverse ethnic group in Africa. Mm-hmm. They failed to recreate Babylon multiple times. Yeah, yeah, that tell you that's why when you understand Bible history and also along with secular history, it's actually oh my gosh, it's faith strength. Right. Esau is Hebrew or Eber, descendant of Eber, and descendant even of Abraham. Very direct descendant. Esau's great Abraham's grandson. And you got to remember Isaac, we got to still respect Isaac. Isaac loved his son Esau. Isaac loved his son Esau. So we got to respect that too. If we respect Isaac, who's the son of Abraham, he still loved his son Esau. So we got to respect that. Now, yeah, he had his right to feel how he felt about Esau, the individual. But he still told us to love our brother. And that's talking, and you think, why the Y DNA, the paternal DNA. And you think of the men as being the leaders, having influence over the people. And bear this in mind, some of these indigenous African civilizations had multi-ethnic groups. Thus, the Berlin Conference created this cloud of confusion, right, with misplacing. Thank you for posting that. Yeah, I don't know. That's what I really thought that a lot of my generation, Gen X, that we were more awakened, and even so our parents. But now, when I fast forward to now, and how many, and being that I've been in social media for a minute now, and many of these people who are of my generation, like Tariq Nasheed, Tommy Sotomayor, and how they, just straight flip, misled people. I don't know if I can think that any longer. Now, I'm not saying that you don't have good intentions. I'm not saying you're an agent, FBI. I really wish you could just really consider what's being said. I feel that you're letting your Black pride. I don't believe you're any sort of agent. I don't believe that you're over here trying to mislead or anything like that. I'm being real with you, FBA allied. I believe that this is about your Black American pride. That's what I believe it's about. It's like, yeah, because even if you were you don't follow Tariq Nasheed, why would you still even FBA? That's him. That's what he concocted. So I'm going, I would not want anything to do with that. I'm telling you, because you're gonna, things may end up getting exposed soon. You know what I'm saying? You got to really consider we got to really consider how we choose to tag ourselves. That's why I said, I'm not gonna reference myself as a Hebrew Israelite. Does that mean that I don't believe that I'm a descendant of Eber? No. Does that mean that I don't believe that I'm Yasharel? No. But I'm not going to, now people say, well, they didn't make up the name Hebrew or Israel. No, I'm just saying I'm really considering my affiliations. Especially when you have people like Tazarak, who I just don't trust, and Sakari and certain leaders of GMS and stuff. Morning, Uncle Take. No, we should not have hate for anyone. We can be civil and indifferent. Yeah, we can. And I'm making this also making this live stream because I just saw a video by someone, and I found out that now that I think about it, I believe she did share that she was of Somali descent. And I noticed I had not seen this person, I see her every now and then pop up, and I ain't think nothing of it because there's a lot of people who come and go. People can't always be up in here all the time. And, as time goes on, there's a whole population of people no longer in YouTube like they used to. I'm just one of the ones who still tagging along. But that whole generation of people in YouTube, that was up in here when I came in here like that would, let's say, frequent my comment section. I don't even see them, a lot of them, every now and then, So that's expected. But then I had to think about it after watching this video. Oh, that's probably why the person I haven't seen them on my channel. And I'm not saying this just because I want to keep a subscriber. No, I really do care. I really don't want to think that I hurt anyone's feelings, because the person made a video and they, saying that, I guess they disagree with them on Rhoda Osman. And so I had to think about that. That person probably saw my video on the brick lady, and probably not just, the fact that, see, not only did I expose that I don't quite believe her and it's questionable, but I also went in further in pointing out that she's a descendant, of Esau, Edom. And, I said, I made a video, it's Rhoda the Edomite mocking Yasharel. But I don't want to think, and see, also too, when I talk about Edomite, I'm talking, excuse me, I'm cleaning my glasses. I'm talking about Edom. I'm talking also about a certain mentality as well. Not just descendants of Esau, but a certain Edomite. But then people say, well, that's bias. But there's a reason I'm saying that. So I'm just I don't want to, like I'm, purposely trying to offend her. And I don't mean to talk about her like, oh, she's the exception. And there's another brother who I know also. And, he let it be known to me he's E1B1B, but he has been very, very cool with me and my channel. And I'm not just saying it's just to keep subscribers. I don't even look at the subscribers on my channel no more. That don't matter anyway, okay? That don't matter so much anyway. But I really am thinking about them, the people. I don't want to believe that I'm hurting anybody's feelings or anything like that, or offending them. That, that is absolutely, especially people who I would definitely still see as sisters, brother, even if they're not of Yasharel. That is not at all. And I really don't want to see black people sitting. Yes, I said black people. You know what I'm saying? You see, I'm still stuck in black and white. But I don't want to see quote unquote black people talking about, and definitely not high-fiving Donald Trump. Now, maybe that's my pride. Maybe that's still about my pride, but that is how I feel. I don't feel comfortable with that. I didn't feel comfortable seeing Tariq Nasheed's video making caricatures of Somali people. I don't feel comfortable with that. Even in me talking about Rhoda Osman, it was not about me. No, you notice I didn't focus on how she looked, the shape, if I'm going to talk about how they look and the shape, I'm talking about phenotype in showing like certain, differentiation. If I'm going to talk about that, I'm not going to be mocking people based on just how they look and all that. In talking about this, that is. I ain't going to say I ain't never went there. Big black American and roasted. Yeah, I've roasted up in here. Shoot. Like I say, I'm only mean to mean people. And I'm not saying, but that don't make it right. That don't make it right. And I know, but that's the thing. I know better. So I know I need to chill. That's what I'm saying. We need to chill with some of this. Just finding myself addressing certain people. But yeah. So that's all I really wanted to talk on. Oh yeah, but one more thing. One more thing. There's always one more thing, ain't it? Hold on. Person leaving comments. Okay. And my FBA is running the discussions on hip hop and black music. Yeah. They saying why does hold on. What up PNA left comment like about 5 or 6 comments. And I told him I gotta delete. Knowing doggone well you could have just made 1 or 2 comments, said all that in 1 or 2 comments. But see, I told him I'm gonna have to remove some of your comments because I've noticed that you FBA posters, I ain't talking Black American, but those who, the Tariq Nasheed followers, I'm just keep it real, that you FBA posters like to spam or flood the comment sections of anyone who opposes your rhetoric to make it seem as if you represent a majority opinion. And I believe that this is being done on purpose. They want also, I'm talking the agents now, they want people to believe that this is what the majority of Black Americans think. This is what, and then it's also a way to intimidate people who may post in opposition. It's damage control, and it's a way to intimidate, so you're thinking, so other people are afraid to post in opposition or express any opposition to this rhetoric because they think, oh, I'm not with the majority. Everybody's going to come and clown me out. And no, I see what's going on. So they said to me, yeah, why does Pan-African people always have a main issue with FBA roasting other people, but never have an issue or just passively mention about those others looking down on Black Americans? Oh my gosh. And have all these derogatory names for Black Americans. Okay, first of all, many of you who are talking and crying about this, many of you know doggone well you ain't encountered that many doggone Africans. Okay? You haven't encountered that many Africans. Maybe you've been around some Jamaicans and some people from the West Indies, but doggone well, many of you have not encountered this abundance of Africans putting you down. Show me the site. Now, only site that I've really seen where there's this abundance of talking against the Maddos was that Somali spot. And I'm not saying they don't exist, but I'm sorry. Show me the channels. Show me the Tariq Nasheed equivalent. Now, I've seen individuals, but I want to see this movement where it's an equivalent with all this roasting. What I've witnessed in here, the roasting on Black people, I have witnessed Black American men and Black American women beefing with each other up in here. I've witnessed white racists beefing against Black people. And I've witnessed, like with Soto Nation, and whether it's white racists or raccoons up in here who are Black American, even though they try to claim Panamanian. What I have seen, also I've seen non-Black people like Latinos and stuff attached to these people, but letting them do the dirty work and roasting Black people. However, if we're gonna let's just talk social media alone, okay? Because I know y'all not talking about the real world, your real lives. Social media alone. I have been in social media for over 20 years, from the message forums and stuff in 2001 and stuff, and came in YouTube. In 2001, same name, Lashid for you, and I came in YouTube world in 2008. And from that time, especially from the time of YouTube world and on, what I have seen, the most roasting and dissing and disrespect of Black people have been, much of this has been my own Black American people, more specifically this gender warring stuff, and the primary target being Black women. Am I right or am I wrong? I have not seen. And in fact, if we want to talk about the so-called tethers, when that Ethiopian woman caught something years ago, years ago, this was an individual woman. Yeah, when this woman here years ago did her video, where were the FBA men? This, since they care about black people, black Americans being disrespected. When this woman here, this Ethiopian woman from the Horn of Africa, you know, just like a Somali person, Horn of Africa, when she made this video disrespecting black women, and it went viral on World Star Hip Hop. Now, who controlled World Star? Now, y'all say he was y'all claim that it's a tethers behind media takeout. Media, was a guy who died with World Star. I don't know. But however, it might have been people, you know, with, you know, foreign background. I don't know. But the thing is, all I know, okay, like, who is sharing this video? This ain't the original upload. Yeah, but this is over 10 years ago. Who is sharing it? Black man's kryptonite. That's probably a black American man. When she was saying all that derogatory, and really she was just saying,
are married to men who are Asian, who come up.
And she made it clear, when I'm talking about black women, I'm not talking about, you know, she said, like, she ain't talking about those in the Caribbean. She talking about black American women. Look, truth hurts, cuts like a knife. I guarantee you, now I may not be right, I guarantee you, the majority of the men who are supporting and high-fiving and re-uploading her video, I guarantee you, the black American. I don't know. And actually, I did see Ethiopian women disagreeing with her. Hold on. I don't know if I can find it now, but there were a few Ethiopian women who made a video you know, opposing. I don't know if I could find it to today, but is this one of them? There were a few women who claimed that they were Ethiopian, and they wanted to make it clear, I remember seeing it, that, yeah, like I say, remember, nothing goes viral coincidentally. But they wanted to make it clear, I don't know if she's one of them, but they wanted to make it clear that they don't.
It's Kimberly J. And I'm doing a video response to ACAT 04 2001's video.
Yeah, this was like, man, nearly 15 years ago. And you see, even 2 years after that, guys are sharing the video, they're loving it. People like the O'Shea's, who now want to be all, they were loving it. Hold on. The Ethiopian chick, she's right. And see, she...
You know, I have nothing against Black American women, but I'm very aware about how these Black women are, okay?
And I'll have the French fries, I mean the fruit cup. French fries, French fries, French fries,
17.
Most of them, they don't know how to speak proper English.
Slang, we don't talk proper English.
And I'm sure we talk the same way a lot of Black American men do. But yeah, but there was a lot of guys, they were praising this video. And if you listen further, she goes further and just talking about, and I believe she's married to a white man. They went further in just talking about Black women, period. But I do recall there were a few, may not be able to find it now. Ethiopia, home of Akat 42001. Yeah, the one, yeah, I remember the channel Blake Barbie doll. She was the only She was the original, I guess you could say, like, divester, I guess. Well, I don't know if she was divester. I don't know. It was only one. There was no Cynthia G's and stuff at that time. Not really. But yeah. Now, I'm not saying that there weren't any black men. I can't say that I recall like that.
Hey, what's going on, y'all? This is Graham 16. I want to do a video about this Ethiopian chick. I forgot the damn screen name and everything, but y'all know who I'm talking about. Before I address some of the things that she said, I want to make a disclaimer and say something. Disclaimer. By all means, I'm not defending what the hell she said, because I don't agree with her. I am.
Okay, well, that's good. And he sounded like a black man. In fact, at that time, the only video I saw from a man opposing her, it happened to be like a Hebrew Israelite, and they were pointing out that, notice her name is Akat, like Akata. But understand, I am also not with those Hebrew Israelite camps who also want to disrespect African people as a whole. So busy trying to stress that we ain't African. But he did point out, saying, notice that her name is Akata. But what I'm saying, yeah. So to that person, dear, I've been here for a while. I have not, if I've had my feelings hurt up in here, sad to say, and I don't mean to respond like, what about black on black crime? Like, in trying to dismiss white racism. But since we want to talk like our feelings have been hurt, I've had my feelings hurt up in here. It is not, it was not Somali people trying to shut my channel down. I hate saying this because I hate when people respond like that and this doesn't mean that I'm dismissing. I'm not using this as just a counter. I'm just saying a lot of you, because, okay, if I do, like, I responded to the Akat, right? So I will check a person if they happen to be from another country thinking that they can, I will check them. But there's no need. When I'm talking about, what is the need for Tariq Nasheed to go on and on and on? It's one thing. Like, okay, when my husband initially showed me him at Clubhouse responding to people disrespecting Black Americans, yeah, I was like, and hearing the disrespect, I was initially like, well, shoot, somebody need to remind this person of USA for Africa. Maybe they forgot. That was like, but then I realized, I had thought about, I said, oh, this is going to get bad. I even knew then. Something, yeah, I don't like this. Like, I knew, my husband didn't see it. But I had a feeling that this was going to go on and on. That was like over 2 years ago. That was like, and I was right. Because I knew how it was making me feel. I was getting angry listening to these foreigners that were on the panel or whatever. This was like a Clubhouse thing. Now, my husband, he's laughing, but I was like, wait a minute. I know I'm getting, the way that I'm feeling, I'm getting stirred in a way I hadn't gotten stirred before. In listening to this Ethiopian person disrespect us like this and with white racists. Yeah, and the Ethiopian was like this was a Clubhouse thing, white racists disrespecting us. And then, so it was like, even though initially my response was like, laughing at Tariq and what he had to say against her and then saying somebody need to remind us of USA for Africa, I had realized, like, wait a minute. This ain't, I know the way I'm feeling right now. And it's like I knew that this was going to go on and get bigger and get into something unnecessary. It is one thing, you're responding, you're countering. But when this is going on and on, Tariq Nasheed is finding a reason every day to respond to supposedly individuals. And why all of a sudden now? Why weren't all these individual callers or whatever, all the tethers, why wasn't that? Why all of a sudden now? Could it be that he's continuing to antagonize? And in addressing one person, he targets an entire demographic. They. There is no need, especially considering how big his channel is. See, that's the thing too. I may get in little beats of squabbles people underground, and I'm not saying that that's good. But I know if I got like thousands, you know, I know I only got a few people over here now listening to me. But if I knew that I'm doing a live stream, over 1,000 people at one time watching me, and I know I got a responsibility. Even with the few people I got, I know I have to be responsible. And I know that I cannot just keep on responding, roasting, especially if I've positioned myself as a leader, as Tariq Nasheed has done. Yes, he is a leader, even if I'm not following him. He knows that he has become a leader. He knows that he has positioned himself as a leader. The whole FBA hashtag was about the whole thing of y'all supposedly delineating was for the sake of pursuing reparations. This is a part of an agenda. He was not even thinking about that before that. He's piggybacking off of the whole ADOS thing, which was clearly about reparations. At least, even though I don't agree with Yvette Carnell, at least Yvette Carnell and Antonio Moore, at least they're making it clear. They've made it clear what their agenda is, what their movement is. At least, instead of trying to act like this is not part of some movement or agenda. He concocted Foundational Black American. He is the leader. Yeah, so you're talking about why does Pan-African people, they have main, well, we can't say nothing. You've been saying stuff back. You've been countering. And when it boiled down to it, are these people even really in those positions of power like that to even really have an effect on you and your lifestyle? You cannot tell me they're taking your jobs. For one, how many of them are actually even over here? So what real effect do they have other than hurting your feelings? This is not productive. There's no need to make further enemies. There's always going to be a prejudice. Whenever you have one group of people against, there's always going to be a prejudice. Even if we're talking about people, I know I'm from Chicago. I know when I went to Milwaukee. I know when I moved to there are black people in that were raccooning in the suburbs against, reminding me that I'm from the projects. Black, it was mainly, even though I'm in this suburb with white racists now in the 80s as a kid, it was his family was from another country. But yeah, I'm just saying. Neil, his family was from another country. But maybe if we get an understanding, why is it that we are taught to see each other, hate each other? You've had, like I talked about, black people. You've had we just came up out of the 90s with the East Coast, West Coast. Now we know that there were instigators. Now we know that it wasn't just an East Coast. It was some new form of COINTELPRO, just a continuation of COINTELPRO through hip hop. And that's what they're doing now with this whole tether versus, they're using hip hop again to cause that. That's why he zoomed it with the microphone check, using hip hop to cause divisions. And it almost worked on me, being that I'm so passionate about hip hop. The same thing happened in the 90s. But this time it wasn't back then. It wasn't about FBA versus tether. Back then they used hip hop. I remember East Coast versus West Coast. Well, so-and-so said this about, I remember Kurt Loder, MTV. Well, what do you think about, instead of talking about rappers, they supposed to be talking about, MTV was instigating so much. What do you, just asking people, what did you do? And so-and-so said, the West Coast rapper said this and this. Y'all don't see what's going on? This is just a continuation. COINTELPRO 2020 style. You don't get it? You don't see it? Then they're using hip hop again. With the whole Fat Joe versus Tariq Nasheed, Derek Colon versus, they're using, and they know, first go at the Puerto Ricans. Because see, we see them as not black. Because Then we're gonna go with the Jamaicans and then you're gonna see the ultimate goal go against the Africans. You don't see what's going on? It's too obvious. You can't see it. This is too obvious. You talking like you're encountering foreigners every day dissing you. Please. You're not even encountering these black tethers that you're talking about like that. You see, saying looking down on it. Not only that, FBA may roast them, but a lot of those other black people go out of their way to get black Americans fired from their jobs. I remember years ago they were claiming in YouTube that black women. First they were saying in YouTube that some of these very same guys who are now loud mouthpieces for FBA. I remember, see, this is what's funny to me. I've been up in YouTube long enough. Some of these very same guys, they were claiming black women are the enemy, black women in cahoots with white men, having them lose their jobs. That was the rhetoric. I'm talking black American women. That was the rhetoric 10 years ago, 10, 15 years ago. That was the claim. Now it's the tethers. Now it's then you know what? They will join them together. I've heard the same stuff. This is the same stuff I was hearing. You are going to have backstabbers, traitors in every group of people. And not everybody is going to like you. You are going to have, just as we know. But the thing is, now why is the only reason we may confront more, be more generalizing and confronting white people is because it's more systematic. With black people, it is not that, who are not in positions of power, it is not systematic. So what's the point of generalizing? It's really pointless, period. But what's the point of we only generalize when an issue gets too big to individualize. This is not some issue that is so big for us to generalize. I'm sorry. Yeah, I talked about, there was this company I was going to work for. And I noticed that this is on the north side of Chicago. But there are a lot of immigrants on the north side, in all fairness. But I noticed that this white man, that was the employer, I noticed that all the black people that were working there, they happen to have accents. Almost as if those are the only people he wanted to work there. And there, like you heard Just Pearly things, making it clear like she'd rather, almost like she'd rather work with those of more direct African descent or black foreigners. Now, yeah, people will say that, yeah, that's because, see, they don't have no standards. They'll bow down. Look, when you have certain people in a certain situation and they have more of a thirst, you're gonna, it's something. Remember, that's why I did the video talking about, like, for instance, Josephine Baker. Okay, just like, it may seem like they get this favorable treatment when they come to the United States. And because for one, they're in a certain mindset. That's with any foreigner who comes to the United States. When they come here, for you to even make a bold enough move to leave your country, you got to be thirsty. When you make that move, you have a thirst. And when it's not a thing of you being kidnapped, taken, or forced, but when you decide to make that decision to migrate to another country, you have a certain thirst. That's with any group of people. And people know, the powers that be, or those who are in control, they know that these people have a certain thirst. I don't want to say desperation, but they know that they're thirsty and eager to take advantage of the American dream or the opportunity or whatever. So yeah, they're going to stay. So they know that they are more likely to be productive, unlike those of us who may have gotten comfortable here. And this is not to say that they are better than us or harder working than us, because it's the same thing vice versa. Like with Black Americans who go to other countries. I can imagine the Black Americans who go live in Ghana, or Nigeria, them also being very productive. And perhaps, who knows, they might be seen as being given more favorable treatment than the people who have already been there, who have already been, I guess you could say, comfortable there. And of course, it's expected that the Black people who are able to go to these migrate and make that big decision got some sort of money. That's why they always, get over there. They feel that they can take advantage and, Yeah, because they go over there. I did a stream a while ago, a couple of years ago, and I was talking about with Josephine Baker, for instance. Yeah, there are people who feel, okay, there was a woman. Okay, this was like some sort of anniversary. I forgot. I did a stream on it a couple of years ago. It was some sort of anniversary of Josephine Baker, whether it was her death, her birthday, something. I forgot. This was a couple of years ago. And there was a woman, a Black woman from France. She had been born in France. Her people been there for years. Yeah, and she was an unambiguous Black woman. And she was saying how even though the France, they seem to love Josephine Baker and they adore her and they respect, almost like worship her. She got like a holiday or something in France. She said that the Black people who are living in France, who have been living in France, born and living in France and been there for like a century or so, over a century, she said that they don't get that special treatment. She said that she was talking about the racism against Black people in France that had been born there. But she said with Black Americans, she said there seemed to be this love, though. That's how she was putting it. And she wasn't hating. She was just speaking the real. She said that there seemed to be this love for Black Americans. And you remember, even like I'm sure y'all have at least, even if you don't know the history, but I'm sure you've at least probably watched the Josephine Baker movie, the biopic that came out in the 90s with Lynn Whitfield. And remember, she was with the Nicholas brothers. No, I'm getting the Dorothy Dandridge. But we can talk about them both. But yeah, Josephine Baker, where in the United States, she felt like she had to be extra goofy and wear blackface, and whereas in France, even if they were fetish, even if with the bananas and all that, but she still felt, she didn't have to be as goofy, and she could dance, and she was seen as sexy, even if there was a fetish, even if there was the exotic stereotypes, but she felt more loved and respected in France than in the United States. And in the Dorothy Dandridge film with Halle Berry, and remember her being with the Nicholas brothers, and they were talking about going to France, like they get more, they love Black folks over there, but obviously it was the Black Americans, and maybe it was just the entertainers, maybe it was the Black entertainers that they were in love with. Even if we were to talk about the Olympics, around the time World War II with Jesse Owens, actually, despite what we were taught in the history books on him being snubbed by Adolf, actually, Jesse Owens spoke like he had great reception. It was when he came back to America. Those were the people that was actually snubbing him. Who was the president at that time? Franklin Roosevelt said that those are the people who actually was snubbing him. And, he said he got love with the German people. I ain't necessarily saying Adolf, but yeah, that's how it is. That's how it seems. And so I talked about it, like they were saying, like the woman from France, she was saying, they seem to have this love for Black Americans who come to France, like come and live in France, maybe because they're in love with the entertainers, who knows? Or they just see us as being entertainers, who knows? But she said the Black people that already been there. And I can imagine probably the same with Germany. They probably don't really regard the Black people. They probably didn't really regard the Black people that were already in Germany. Yes, there were Black people still in Germany. But yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, but you notice how there's a lot of Black, they fall in love with Europe, or they fall in love. It seemed like there's so much love there, but the black people who are already there, and it could be the same thing, who knows, in the African continent. Now, yeah, I've been seeing people making videos and, certain, things that certain black Americans who moved to Ghana having their homes demolished. And, so I wouldn't make that move, even though I was definitely talking to my husband, it was exciting me, especially us listening to, what's his name, who's behind the Hebrews to Negroes, Ronald Dalton. It was very tempting at the time when everybody was talking about Ghana. But so there's still there are these stories, and I can imagine there's going to be some prejudice and bias, but for the most part, those who have went to and Tariq Nasheed included, they talk of a good experience. Now, of course, we can't just go by a one-time visit, because trust me, when I was really going through my phase of, around 2019 and really thinking about, because everybody was talking about going to Ghana, and, and then also Ronald Dalton, and I was just found myself looking at videos and looking up anything, what people who went to live out there, what they have to say, whether it's Ghana, Nigeria. And the only thing that they warn you about people who would scam you, though, like, especially if they know you're American and they think you got money, they assume you got money. So they say it's good if you know somebody already out there. But other than that, the experience, just like with Richard Pryor, when he was it's usually a positive one. It's usually a positive, like they're showing love. And it's just something about, and also the United States, they cause these divisions. You see, when you're talking about people that have migrated and been conditioned in the U.S. to hate us. Like, for instance, let's talk about Latinos. Like, there may be some animosity, let's say, that you may, like, let's say Latino gangs, like Latin Kings, or whatever, and black, there may be that animosity, this and that. But then people who say, they say I know who've been to Mexico, and they say the people are very loving, actually. There's a big difference between those who are in the country and those who have been over here conditioned. And I know y'all don't want me putting down the USA. Yeah. Right. I have a friend I was in college with. I don't know if we still Facebook friends, but oh gosh, is she from Senegal, or oh God, forgive me for not exactly. But yeah, anyways, I remember she was showing me on her laptop her family and stuff, and how they doing. Now I know y'all, well, why she's over here then? But no, she was showing me, to dispel certain stereotypes. Yeah, just like how we have been, like when I was younger and National Geographic, and I remember they had the thing they showed this Ethiopia, them fighting over the beautiful virgins, and I remember my brothers laughing. It was all looking all primitive and stuff to us, and now my mama schooled us to know, but it was just a sibling. My mama wouldn't condone that. But yeah. But just like how we have been given these National Geographic images of them just all being primitive, this and that, and third world country, and of course, eventually the USA for Africa, and that was real. Don't get me wrong, the famine, but when you eventually learn what led to these countries becoming third world. You know what I'm saying? Since they're being referred to that, you'll find out what actually led. Now, just like we now know with Rwanda, what led to the warring, okay? But there, how you thinking when you're young and you don't know better, that's just, these people they just don't evolve or whatever. They don't, you understand what I'm saying? So just as we're given stereotypes, African booty scratcher stereotypes, they're being, what do you think they're shown about us? What do you think they're being told about us? They're being shown minister society, gangster rap, thug life. Yeah, like we just see them either living primitive or they're toting military weapons, and yeah. But they like, I don't know where this person is going here and addressing Ethiopia. But yeah, and I'm not saying these things ain't happening. Just like we know, things are happening over here. But we know I'm on the south side of Chicago. I know doggone well that all this Chirac and all of that, they're not going to focus on the black. Oh gosh, I just seen some footage, Chicago, 1930s. You know when they had these footage remastered. Oh, I want to show it to you, man. But I don't know if I should show it now. But it's showing. Yeah, I was just looking at it yesterday, showing before World War II. I just watched it, not on this channel though. Oh goodness, Street Life Chicago. Oh man, was this it? What I watched? But on my other channel.
There's something up there.
Everybody, bro. You don't see, I remember somebody before when they shared footage of downtown 1940 Chicago, and all you saw was white people, right? And they were like, "Oh, look, it was so clean before the Negroes came on." What you talking about? You had quote unquote Negroes in Chicago from the very jump. Deuce Abel was of Haitian descent. He might have been biracial. Some older publications just say Negro. Later they say he was mulatto. But I'm like, what are you talking about? And trying to say like, oh, it was the black people when they came, it became violent. And they, like, oh, are you kidding me? This was Al Capone. This was are you St. Valentine's Day Massacre? Anybody? What are you talking about? You talking about when Chicago riot 1919? You want to talk about they trying to make it like, oh, this was a time before the black folks migrated into Chicago and made it violent. You have black folks, and you want to talk about violence? We take it back to 1919. In Chicago, who were the ones being violent? You've been at black folks in Chicago, but this is before World War II. Look at this. Now they, of course, the sound. Of course, they don't have the. Look at it, litter. Look. You see, before the GI Bill, before World War II. Now, some think this might have been. You see, people of different races. Now, some people just believe that this area might be Little Italy. I don't know, but you're going to see people of different races because this is the time. Look, little black boy right there. Look at the man. Yeah, we was watching this last night, trying to figure out, is this man alive? My husband said he saw him breathing. Look at little black. You know how they remastering now? Of course, the audio, they don't have the real audio, so they make up, they concoct this audio. I just wish it was brighter. But you're going to look, they all in line. This is the time of the Depression. All these people in line. This is Chicago. People with different races, black, in line for food. Look at the poverty. Like, what y'all talking? Just because you see a footage of downtown and it looks all nice and lovely. Like, what are you talking about? These were ghettos. Look at it. Look. These are ghettos. Everybody. See, they uneven the playing field. Look, there go a black man right there, but the majority of these people, Caucasian. Look, you see some black people, everybody in line for food. Everybody. See, they knew what they were doing in creating the suburbs, and look at the people. Now, yeah, I wish this could have been brighter. Well, this man drunk. Now, some people believe this might have been like 1939. Look, those look like, even if this is Little Italy, these look like white kids. Look at all the garbage and stuff. Kids getting out of this is just Chicago. It's not telling us exactly where. Maybe some parts are Little Italy. But look at all the litter. And I'm not trying to mock these people. I'm just saying, This is America, 1930. This is Chicago. Since people want to talk about, yeah, because I remember before remember I told y'all that, because they would always, if they have a video showing Chicago, let's say 1940, and it looks nice, they always want to act like, oh, they always somebody leaving a post in the comment section, see, before black people. I'm like, yeah, first of all, this is, like, I had to post to that person. This is footage from downtown. I could go downtown Chicago right now and have you believing it's the paradise and and everything's nice and wonderful. Okay, go within the city. And there were definitely black people already here. Black people probably doing better than people in this area, wherever this is. But you see people, black, white, but mostly white. But you see some black folks. I know it's hard to see, but look at these kids playing in the garbage. They digging through the garbage for stuff. This is Chicago. This is my city. And this city has always been corrupt. I love my city, but it's always been like, what are y'all talking about? Yeah, like, I don't know history. But they knew after World War II, they could definitely, see, look at this. Got to pick through trash for stuff. You see this? Just pearly things. So why do you think that there was some envy? You had black folks coming up to it after World War I and then World War II, getting jobs at these factories. And yeah. But hold on. But Chicago 1919, hold on. How were the black folks in now this is the 1930s. But yet, these were black folks on the south side. This is how the south side of Chicago. Look what they did. You want to talk about, look at what they did. These were homes. Black folks had their homes established. And this is 1919. Look, it had our businesses. Look at how they well dressed, and don't let, I'm not saying that there weren't the slums, but don't let them fool you. These are, so to hit this image here, the reds representing Red Summer, they got to relocate now because you had some white hoodlums, some being of Irish descent, just pearly things, straight up trashing their home and stuff and making them leave. And families worked hard, black families establishing themselves. But anyways, yeah, you look at that footage. Right. Doing Reconstruction. How you doing? Warriors are the best. White racists terrorize black people in America in pogroms. Hold on, I'm gonna have to look up that word. I'm not too familiar with that word. Pogroms. Never heard of that. I'm one of those. If I don't know, I gotta look it up right away. Oh, an organized massacre of a particular ethnic group, in particular that of Ish people in Russia. Oh, I never heard that term before. Yeah, definitely organized massacres. They'll call it a riot, and this was even before the ultimate Black Wall Street. This was before Rosewood. They were doing this, what sparked the Red Summer across the United States. But yeah, anyways, yeah. So also I wanted to point out, like, you remember on my Ancient Egypt series, so like when you think of this woman here and this animosity, Remember I shared with y'all on Mustafa Hefni? In my Ancient Egypt series, he's a man from Egypt, born in Egypt. He, I believe in the 70s, came to live in the United States, teacher, educated man, but he wanted to be listed as Black American. And I can imagine, especially during that time and so I do understand the delineation, making clarification, but this was a man born in Egypt, yeah. And he's saying he's a Black man from Egypt, and my Black ancestors founded ancient Egypt. Remember I shared with you, yeah, so now, yeah, he is definitely, Kemetic.
I'm a Black Egyptian. My father is much darker than I am. My mother is lighter than I am. In Egypt, people are identified by the religion first, not the race. So in Egypt, if you are Christian, you are a minority person. But if you're Black, you're not a minority person. You are a part of the mainstream society. And I came from this background. And in Egypt, you identify as Arab and as Muslim. And in this country, when I first came, I identified myself as Arab American and Muslim first. And gradually, I became to identify myself as Black. I came to the US in 1978.
And also, remember, he came into the United States at a different time. It may be with, some of these who come over, more recent years, it's a different mindset. He came over in the 70s. There's still with perhaps the influence of Afrocentrism, Black pride, yeah, Black unity. Yeah, we were in the disco era, but I'm just saying.
And I became US citizen, identify myself as Black. And Muslim first. And gradually, I became to identify myself as Black. I came to the US in 1978, and I became US citizen in 1985. When I became a US resident, I was told by the Immigration and Naturalization that I am white. And I told them that I'm Black, and they said, no, in this country, you are white. All Arabs in this country, all Arab immigrants are white.
So this is what they told him. Do you think that there's still, so let's say some of these Somali, and remember what I said what Arab just means, but some of these Somalis, like let's say that they've already been, some of these children of, let's say, Somali immigrants and stuff in the United States, like let's say in Minnesota. So their parents might have been told, you're not Black. Do you understand what I'm saying? And listen to also what he said that they told him. Because some of this animosity that we're hearing, it may be from the children of parents who migrated here, let's say during that time period that he's talking, and they probably, I'm sure that they were told the same exact thing. I'm pretty sure.
In this country, you are naturalization that I am white. And I told them that I'm Black, and they said, no, in this country, you are white. All Arabs in this country, all Arab immigrants are white. I didn't pay much attention in the beginning to this because in the Arab world, we identify with our ethnicity first as Arabs and then with the race second as Black or white or whatever. But in this country, you identify with your racial group first and then with your ethnicity second. Gradually, I became Black first and Arab second. And I rejected my white classification publicly for the first time in 1987, in February, as a panelist in a function sponsored by the Association of the Study of Black Life and History in Detroit. I said that I belong to two minority groups. I'm Arab American and Black American, and I'm racially Black and ethnically Egyptian. I was harassed by my employer right after that. I work for a white school district. The superintendent is white. All the associate superintendents are white, even though that we provide services to 30% Black population. But the organization is white and the approach is very white. The attitude towards me changed completely after I went out publicly and rejected my white classification. One coworker came to me and told me, a white coworker came to me and told me right after the function that he met with the superintendent, and if I don't keep my mouth shut, my educational career is over. He said, you have nothing to do with these people. You have a history and a culture. these people came from the jungle. You have nothing to do with them. These people lie and steal. When I see one of them in my neighborhood, I call the police.
So y'all heard that. This is what he was told by those in positions of power and influence. Hey, Azure TV. Warriors are the best, Azure TV. This is what he was told by those who were in positions of power. He was told. And this is now 1987, even though he came here in 78. This is what he was being told in 87. He was born in Egypt, the so-called Middle East, near the Horn of Africa. Now, he acknowledged that he, by ethnicity, identifies Arab. As race, he identifies Black, right? He acknowledged that. But he said that he was told, and he still to this very day, I followed him on Facebook, but he hasn't posted nothing as of recently, so I hope he's okay. Yeah, I had shared this also in my Ancient Egypt series. He said he was told that you must, by law, you must identify. So y'all got to understand. Now his children, so imagine those, there are other people like Iman, and you don't think they're not being told the same thing? Or because a lot of this rhetoric, that anti-Black rhetoric, a lot of this also may be younger people who, let's say they're in Minnesota. Their parents may have came over here the same time this man came over here. Let's say the 70s, 80s. I don't know if that's what they'll tell them today. But now he's one who's brave and happened to stand up, and now he understands that he's different from us. He understands. He knows that. He understands it. But considering that what race is based on, okay? Race ain't just looking at lineage. It was always just about a phenotype. Considering what race is based on, he understands and he knows deep down that he could be pulled over and profiled just as any other quote unquote Negro who was born in America. Whether he descended of slaves or not. He understands that in the United States. Okay. Yeah. So, but just imagine, just because he may have stood up and said, no, I reject this, but think of the many others, thousands others who did not. And it could have been, and consider the situation that they were in. Consider the situation that they were in. You accept this or you lose your job. You call yourself Black or Negro, you're going to be linked with this and that. Hear it again.
To me and told me, right, me changed completely.
Now, this was by 1987. So they were still telling people this in and these were not just neighbors, friends, nobodies, white. These are people who had an influence on his career, his lifestyle, his survival. And it did affect his career, his survival. Just him alone, just wanting to identify as Black.
White, and the approach is very white. But the organization is white and the approach is very white. The attitude towards me changed completely after the superintendent is white, all the associate superintendents are white, even the white school district Egyptian. I was harassed by my employer right after that. I work for a white school, belong to two minority groups. I'm Arab American and Black American, and I'm racially Black and ethnically Egyptian. I was harassed by my employer right after that. I work for a white school district. The superintendent is white, all the associate superintendents are white, even though that we provide services to 30% Black population. But the organization is white and the approach is very white. The attitude towards me changed completely after I went out publicly and rejected my white classification. One coworker came to me and told me, a white coworker came to me and told me right after the function that he met with the superintendent, and if I don't keep my mouth shut, my educational career is over. He said, you have nothing to do with these people. You have a history and a culture. These people came from the jungle. You have nothing to do with them. These people lie and steal. When I see one of them in my neighborhood, I call the police.
So why would they even feel the need to tell him all that? Not only they're telling him you must identify as white. For one, he's an educated man, and he's Egyptian. That's their way of claiming Egyptians. And it's their way of claiming an educated man as Caucasian, as white. And he's saying he had to identify as white. So there's no telling how many people are actually, they got white on their, census form application, white Caucasian. Yeah, but then they felt the need to go further. These people are from the jungle. They have no history, like our history just goes back to slavery, like what Tariq Nasheed will teach. Our history is just limited, it goes back to slavery. How do we know any of this happened? Why would this man be lying? Especially when he's taking legal action. Yeah, I even shared the letter that he tried to, send to Obama. And this is from years ago. This man ain't lying. What reason you have to lie?
With them, these people lie and steal. When I see one of them in my neighborhood, I call the police.
You don't think that he was told this? Why would he be lying? No, I don't know anybody, but I'm going to give him. Why wouldn't I believe him? Especially when I consider history and knowing history. Why wouldn't I believe him? Just like you have people who are trying to tell us that if we are of a lighter complexion, you're not them. But forget them. They nobody's. These are people. Okay, all right. I believe him. That's all I'm gonna say. I believe him.
Nothing to do with them. These people shot. My educational career is over. He said, you have nothing to do with these people. You have a history and a culture. These people came from the jungle. You have nothing to do with them. These people lie and steal. When I see one of them in my neighborhood, I call the police. And I was told by the director of general education, who is retired now, in 88, I was told by him that I get people angry when I say.
And with him giving such detailed information, he could very easily be sued for slander if he was lying. Especially being that he is giving detailed information. And he's speaking publicly. He would have been sued for slander.
That I'm Black Egyptian. And I was told by the director of general education, who is retired now, in 88, I was told by him that I get people angry when I say that I'm Black Egyptian. If I just say that I'm Egyptian, I would get along. I have to add that I was denied promotion twice because I chose Black classification. This is part of my 2 lawsuits against my employer, which are currently pending. 2
lawsuits. He's taking legal action. This isn't just a person who is in social media giving, testimony, and he's taking legal action.
Lawsuits.
Now, just for the education of our viewership, why don't you share with us a breakdown of Egypt as it is today, insofar as blacks or combinations thereof of European descent and what have you?
Well, I mean, if you don't believe him, you don't believe him. I believe him, so I believe him. I'm not going to advocate for white people. Okay, I believe him. I'm going to look at history. I'm going to look at and I believe him.
We don't have Egyptians of European descent in Egypt. We have a population which is basically we don't have Egyptians of European descent in Egypt. We have a population which is basically which is basically a mixture of ancient Egyptian blacks who intermarried with Arabs right after the Arab conquest. The ancient Egyptian population was brown and black before the Arab conquest. But before the Arab conquest came the Greeks. It was the ancient Egyptian population was in Egypt for thousands of years. The ancient Egyptian population was brown and black. And the Greeks came in 300 BC, and they started to intermarry with the local population. And then the Romans came and ruled from 70 BC until they were conquered by the Arabs and kicked out by the Arabs in the 7th century. And these people intermarried with the Egyptian Copts, and they made the pigmentation of the Egyptians, the Copts, much lighter because of this intermarriage with Europeans.
Now, you're an educator, okay? Now, how do you deal with situations when you practice your profession insofar as dealing with the mythology or the misconceptions about Egypt being a white civilization? How do you deal with that?
This is a big problem because Egypt, the ancient Egyptian civilization was a black civilization, and ancient Egyptians were black according to the Greek scholars and the Roman scholars. Ancient Egypt became white only in the 19th century and in the 20th century. And the scholar who is responsible for this is Seligman, the noted anthropologist from England.
You know, I've talked about him in detail in my series, Seligman. Okay, and the Seligman, the Caucasian Hamitic theory. Okay, because like I said, now for a long period, they were teaching that all black people descended from Ham, right? Just Ham. Supposedly the curse of Ham. And we know what that actually goes back to. The Babylonian Talmud. But anyways. Yeah. That goes back to the Talmud. But anyways. All black people supposedly descended from Ham. For a long time, they were calling us Hamites, Canaanites, descendants of Canaan. You know. Yeah. Even though the Bible does not speak of this curse that they are talking about on Ham, it talks about Canaan. Because the sins of the father, it had nothing to do with complexion. It had nothing to do with any of that. Okay, what they claim. But anyways. Yeah, so for a long, but however, okay, definitely post-Enlightenment, post-scientific era. Yeah. You had the Renaissance era, the scientific era, the Enlightenment era. And sometime around the late 1800s, especially at, considering blacks, the, emancipation era and all that. But yeah, sometimes, yeah, of course, you had Darwinism and his theories. They started just dumping the teachings of the Bible altogether, because in saying that, and that's why I say some of the most brutal acts of racism happened post-slavery. Yeah, when there was now, initially they had the pre-Adamic teachings. Now they used to teach we came from Ham, and then they began to teach that we didn't come from Shem, Ham, or Japheth, but believe that Eve mated with an animal or whatever, and yeah. So then they had the we're not fully human, and then they decided to dump the Bible altogether, because in saying that we're descendants of Ham, then that would also contribute us to the great civilizations that were established by the Hamitic people, being that the Grecians and the Romans and Turks and everything that they learned, they initially, in regards to, civilization, and they learned from the Hamitic people, like of Cush and Mitzrayim, or Egypt, Nubia. So, they had an issue, you know, so they couldn't contribute because then now it was the time of scientific racism and these theories to support. You know, theories having to do with, you know, you got Blumenbach and his racist, you know, racial categorizations and these theories in relation to skull shape, size, cranial indices in relation to intelligence. You know, think Django and the skull, and you know, they all these whack pseudo theories that they were having at the time. So, but they had a problem. You know, we can't contribute this, you know, all of this in science. We can't contribute it to these black people. So that's when they began to. So they came up with the Hamitic theory that the descendants of Ham were actually these black Caucasians. Whereas before, initially, Blumenbach did not he put us all in the category of Ethiop. But now they're saying the Ethiopian even, or the Kushite, now they're saying that, you know, yeah, that the Hamitic people are now actually just some dark Caucasians. And so they could look at things like, you know, oh, well, look at the narrow nose. But understand those people, they've always had, and don't think that that has anything to do with necessarily Arab or Caucasian admixture, because they don't have schnozzes. For them, many of them, for a lot of them, for the most part. Yeah, so we know that there have been some mixing. And even when we look at the ancient Romans and Grecians, we don't know exactly how they may have looked. I'm not saying that they were black. But like you could find footage of Egypt, even in the 1920s. I've shown this. They've got footage where you could see it. They've got it colorized and or just in black and white. And you can see the masses of people, even how they looked then, very different from what you may see today. You saw many very melanated, much darker than him people, even in the 1920s. Many of them. So what happened? But yeah, that was basically with the whole Hamitic theory. Even though for years, see, that's what I'm saying. They keep changing definitions and stuff. You know, 1 minute mulatto is separate. Next minute it's black. You know, whenever it is convenient. Whenever it's convenient. So who am I going to believe, him or those who have been lying and putting it in books and keep changing? And I keep showing you how they keep changing it. 1 minute with Canaanite, next minute with not Canaanite. 1 minute, you know, whenever it's convenient.
Seligman. I know the noting.
Yeah, but when you look at what he's talking about, the Hamitic theory. So this is what they're being taught in the Western, when they're in the Western world. Yeah, and they like using this image here. They use this. This is one of the images that they use to support. And this right here look like might be an actor. They'll use these images of dark looking, like people that look Caucasian to support it. The Hamitic hypothesis was discredited pseudoscientific theory rooted in biblical interpretations, claiming that advanced civilizations and culture in Africa, like ancient Egypt, East African kingdoms, originated from Hamitic invaders, a supposed branch of the Caucasian race from the north, rather than indigenous Africans, justifying colonialism and racial hierarchies by deeming Black Africans inherently less capable of civilization. This theory falsely attributed to complex African achievements to white outsiders and has been used to justify atrocities like the Rwandan genocide, but is now largely rejected by scholars who recognize Africa's diverse internal developments. Yeah, so this is when Hamitic people now they're black, or now they're Caucasian. They're just dark Caucasians. Whereas before, Blumenbach and miners who concocted the whole, you know, racial categorization, they wouldn't even see Italian people. They wouldn't even see Italian people because being that they had Moorish ancestry. They referred to them as not true Caucasians. They said they were soiled and stained. So there could not be any. They did not see black people as Caucasian or dark people as Caucasian. They would have called them soiled, but they keep changing things over time when convenient for their narrative.
Just from England. And the scholar who is responsible for this is Seligman, the noted anthropologist from England, Seligman. White supremacy argues that blacks are inferior than white intellectually. They are subhuman and they are incapable of building a civilization. White supremacy had one dilemma until Seligman came. The dilemma was ancient Egypt was black according to the Greek and the Roman scholars. 10 of them said that, including Aristotle and Plato. 10 of them said that in writing. They had this dilemma. Ancient Egyptian was black. So if blacks are inferior intellectually and are incapable of building a civilization, how come the ancient Egyptians built a civilization? Seligman found the solution for this dilemma. He came up with a theory called the Hamite theory. He separated the blacks who built a civilization in Egypt and Ethiopia from the rest of the black race, and he called them brown-skinned whites, or the Hamites. So Seligman saved white supremacy from this dilemma, and all the white scholars followed him from that time on. This was at the end of the 19th century. And since that time, white scholarship says that ancient Egypt is white.
Mustafa Hefni is currently working on his doctorate degree at Wayne State University. His dissertation topic is a content analysis of the treatment of ancient Egypt in world history textbooks. And just how far is this determined Egyptian willing to go to be classified black?
I want to carry my case all the way up to the U.S. Supreme Court if necessary.
Okay, so last I heard from him, yet when Obama was president, he tried to, when he was still in president, it was around the time of his second term. He, being that Obama can be considered black, although he is biracial with a whole non-black parent, and also the fact that Obama's father is African, so of course, that was the last, and I shared that with you, his letter to Obama, like, why is it that basically he's still, but he said he had not been responded to. He got no response still. So this is serious. This is really serious. But going back to what I was saying on Edom, I definitely believe now. So you can say, well, this is just the white man. This is just a white man. You got to understand Esau, Edom. And when I'm talking Edom, I'm not talking because he's probably predominantly E1B1B, this man here. When I'm talking Edom now, I'm talking that mentality, the Edomite conquest, if you will, mentality. They have been playing on the self-esteem, using quote unquote white people as primary soldiers. Do you understand? So when I'm talking about, I'm not talking about just, it's not even just about me talking about Somalian people. It's not about me just talking about it. I'm talking about the cabal, okay? Yeah, he probably is. More than likely, I would assume that he is E1B1B. That's why I'm trying to get us all to get an understanding of what's really going on. And really, maybe I shouldn't be saying it about Edom, but more about Satan. He's just been using, just as Esau, Edom, or I'll just say Edom, been using white people to do a lot of his dirty work. Satan using Edom. But as we know, this is not really a racial war. This is not really a war about, this is more of a spiritual war. We wrestle not against flesh and blood. It's just there are people who are being used. And because you got to understand, Esau was actually, you got to understand, it was the barbarians, those referred to as Goths, those referred to as Vandals. These were white people who sacked what Esau had established, the Roman Empire. So, one way that they have been able to obtain dominance once again was through fusing with these, mixing, blending, fusing with the Goths, if you will. The people who were once referred to as Berber Aryans, barbarians, Barbar Aryans. Aryans, perhaps synonymous, is it synonymous with Hurrians? And have them do a lot of the dirty work by making them believe that they are supreme. Like with the Seligman theory. But should we take this out on those who just happen to descend from Esau? That's still our brother. No, this is more so about Satan the devil. This is more so about Satan the devil and his demons, and it is really more of a spiritual war. And when we come to understand that, whether you are from, and we should all be trying to be, even if you're not of Yasharel, you should be trying to be grafted in, and that you represent Yah spiritually, because it's not just about lineage. And like the person said that's posting to me on behalf of FBA, see, and he's still talking, watch a video entitled Black Americans Responsible to Jamaica's. Oh gosh. Yeah, but Black American music, it has if you think that there's absolutely no Africoid film, because there's white people who can say, well, you know what, a lot of our original gospel songs were originally were songs written by white people, white gospel songs, like Amazing Grace and all that. Yeah, they're so busy trying to no, this is my, Now you're saying Dwan B is actually one of the only ones diving deep. I respect Dwan B for what he is doing in schooling on hip hop, but he is making this like a gang war. It's like this is contributing to COINTELPRO 2020 style and using music hip hop. This is no different than what was going on in the 90s, East Coast versus West Coast. We started. It's the same thing, 2020 style. Otherwise, I appreciate. But when he's going into, I didn't play the rest of what he was saying. He was also going into musty tethers, all these dang on unnecessary generalizations. Then I can't respect that. That's unnecessary. And he's saying, he's leaving comment after comment. Geography is where the lineage is. Where Bahans, or, like the people from, I may be mispronouncing it, but I know he's referring to the people from the let me just like the Bajan, the Bajans. Am I saying it correctly? Yeah, like the people Barbados. Yeah, okay. When Bajans separate themselves from FBA, Black Americans, I guess, but align themselves with other islands, it's based on their geography in the Caribbean and their historical lineage in the Caribbean. The dancehall and reggae music that they in Barbados and Jamaica has a lineage rooted in Black American music. Yeah, you best believe that the influence is back and forth more than you realize. but you see them running around giving FBA. What are you going to gain? And what is you, okay, so, all right, let's say it all originated with, now what? What are you trying to prove? This is about your pride. And I get it. Just like in us talking about ancient civilizations. But one reason that we make this claim, well, I get it to a degree, but with this is just, okay, you're talking about geography where lineage is. No, geography is where the line is. Geography is not where the lineage is. It's where the line is. Geography is not where the lineage is necessarily. It's where the line is. And then you have to consider who drew the line. Like geography says that the so-called Middle East, which includes Jordan, land of Canaan, Jordan, where state of Israel is, geography says that that is part of Asia and not Africa. However, it was, if we were to just go by where the lines have been drawn, even though the so-called Middle East was on the same plate as the African continent, what is now designated, before the Suez Canal was completed. Also, geography is based, what you are talking about, it's based on these lines that have been, like, for instance, Dominican Republic and Haiti. That's also based on the colonizer. See, that's what you're going by. The lines that were drawn by the colonizers, who enslaved who, or who was the slave master, what language they spoke. But when it boiled down to it, even though the Haitians, the Dominican Republic and Haitians got their issues, even though they're connected. Hold on, baby. Let's see the image. Let's look at the image. You see of Haiti and Dominican Republic. They're both connected. Now, you're saying that geography is where the lineage is. No, it's where the line is. And who set the line? Okay, we know that the Haitians and those of the Dominican Republic, we know that they have beef. And they're serious about that line. But who initially drew the line? And yeah, they do represent, they speak different languages. The Haitians, for the most part, French, their version of French. I'll just say they're French. Dominican Republican Spanish. Why? Because Spaniards had the dominance in Dominican Republic. Whereas the French, Haiti. That's what the line is about. Okay? You saying geography is where the lineage. No, it's not about the lineage, because regardless, I'm pretty sure that those of Haiti and the Dominican Republic, I'm pretty sure they share the same quote unquote black lineage. They may have different European ancestry. I don't know what to say on whatever native there may be, but I'm pretty sure, just because the Haitians, I'm pretty sure when it comes to the black lineage, I'm pretty sure it's pretty much, and that's what I'm talking about. Might even be the same Africoid tribes. I'm pretty sure. Right, exactly. Who drew the lines? Who built the cages, Joe? Who drew the lines? This is about some doggone geography. But when it comes to, when we're talking about that Jamaican and that we may have the same black lineage, as that Jamaican. Now, maybe there are people of Yoruba, you're of Igbo, and I do think that we need to understand the distinctions even with that. But you're going to tell me that that has no connection with sub-Saharan West Africa? Get the heck out of here. And I'm not saying that that's where they all originated, because we could go further into migration, and I know better, knowing that we're of Yasharel. This is about geography. This is about USA, Hulk Hogan. USA, that's what this is about. And it's really about the Western world, and that's what y'all are representing. This is the FBA is the black equivalent of MAGA, which really doesn't give it a black equivalent. Isn't it interesting? I noticed that Tariq, I haven't listened to it. He got some on FWA. Because he's listening to us. You best believe. My little live stream, he's probably one of the 7 to 10 people right now. You best believe that Tariq Nasheed is listening, has been listening. It's interesting. I'm talking about the whole, is there a FWA? Right after, somebody, we were talking about how Donald Trump is not no kind of in mocking, no FWA. Interesting. Of course, I definitely know that Eminem saw, well, especially at the time when they had got over 50,000. You understand? They people may not follow. I'm talking. They know of my channel because they knew of my channel when it was a little more. And Tariq has had the same. He has had the same channel. So more than likely, over 10 years ago, he subscribed to my channel. Took from my Ancient Egypt series. Okay. So you best believe, and he has not changed that channel. So you best believe he knows what we're talking about over here. And he's doing damage control. And he's sending perhaps damage control. Oh, yeah, Tommy, he gave up though. Tommy Sotomayor gave up. He wasn't gonna get me to Tommy gave up on me. He just hoping I'll leave him alone. But what's sad, I'm seeing this. I don't know what's more dangerous with the Soda Nation rhetoric or now the FBA. I don't know. Well, I guess I'd have to say the Soda Nation because that's dividing black men and black women. Or I'm sorry, Yasharel men and Yasharel women. And that's where it starts. But see, they feel that they think they've been pretty successful in that. So now we gotta have to have another focus right now. Yeah, they're still in the work. So that's why a lot of these people, I'm surprised that Tommy ain't jumped on the whole FBA thing. That's why a lot of these people, like the O'Shea's and stuff, they went from passport, and Tariq, they went from passport bro rhetoric, because Tariq's OG, talking about them women in Brazil and stuff. They went from the passport bro rhetoric. They contributed to the dividing of black men and black women, or Yasharel men, black men, black women, regardless. And they now, okay, we're going to divide. We're going to go further with the divide. This is all COINTELPRO 2020 style, my opinion. But y'all, I'll give it y'all later. Enjoy the Sabbath. Make sure that you get a Sabbath lesson in. I don't know. 1 minute he's in, then he's out. Yeah, but he offended the cabal. That's why he's no longer in YouTube. He keeps trying to come back over here, but this ain't about him or black people hindering his freedom of speech. No. But anyways, yeah. So when you boil down to it, even when we're talking about quote unquote white people, we got to remember this is not really a racial war. This is not a war on geography. This is a spiritual war. Leave with this, and we got to understand this. We are not to be hating, because see, Edom, the kingdom of Edom, it's moved on. It's moved beyond. And for all we know, the descendants of Somalia, they may be the descendants, when we're talking E1B1B, they may be, the descendants of Esau and Ishmael. And Jacob, Esau, they wanted I also believe that there are descendants of Edom that may be that look just like us and definitely would be put in the category of Negro. Did you know Jacob, Isaac and Rebecca? I'm sure they were pleased with his Ishmaelite wife, but it was, we got to still remember these, Isaac's children, Abraham's grandchildren. These are Abraham's children, and we are not to hate Edom, but I just wish that we would really see how we are being manipulated by Satan the devil. And that is what Yasharel, we are supposed to be, that light. And even, perhaps even more specifically, Judah, we are supposed to be enlightening other. Now, yeah, I expect there's going to be resistance on the other side. But yeah, if there's like the spirit of hate against our people, what do y'all think that might be? That's all I'm trying to say. Like, because I am going to have to go further into talking about it. But I'm not trying to hurt anybody or offend people, but I am going to, y'all willing, if I get on it, go further in talking about that. But remember, leaving with these scriptures. And see, even white people, they're going to have to wake up. They're going to have to put that pride aside. All of us are. If I am willing to try to put, or if I'm going to try, I'm not going to say willing, to put my pride aside, because I'm beginning to understand what's priority more. And that's hard, because I've been black and proud for a long time. But the only way these Gentiles and white folks, they are going to have to, put their pride aside and realize that they have been lied to. But it says in the scriptures that a lot of these Gentiles, they're going to realize, didn't it say in the scriptures they're going to realize, hold on. I got to find that one too then. Let me get it exact. Forgive me for not knowing it off the dome like I should. Jeremiah 16, going down to verse 18. And first, I will recompense their iniquity, or their sin, double, and their sin double, because they have defiled my land. They have filled mine inheritance with the carcasses of their detestable and abominable things. O Yahuwah, my strength and my fortress and my refuge in the day of affliction. The Gentiles. Now, Gentiles usually represented those of the European, of the descendants of Japheth, more specific, even more so specifically, those who populated the, Europe, islands of the Gentiles. The Gentiles shall come unto thee from the ends of the earth, and shall say, surely our fathers have inherited lies, vanity. A lot of this is vanity, like this pride, and things wherein there is no profit. So it's gonna, and this is already happening. You have people already since we're talking about the reckoning, you already have people who already, there are quote unquote white people, even there's a man, even in the state, right? An Israeli man in the state of Israel who did a video acknowledging who Yasharel by lineage really truly is. There are people who are realizing, oh, we've been lied to. Our fathers have lied to us. But we got to remember this. So what this is really about. For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places. That's what we need to remember. This isn't really deep down. Even though I may talk a lot in black and white, deep down I know, and I'm coming to a even more so an understanding. This isn't even just about Jacob versus Esau, Yasharel versus Edom. This is about Satan the devil. This is about a Luciferian agenda. And understand, when you think about the mark of the beast, the number of man, even when you're worshiping yourself, self-worship in itself is Luciferian. Did you realize, do you know that? So, and I know I have to chill on, I know I keep talking. Because even when I think about it, me talking about this whole thing with Love Island, even though I shouldn't have been watching a show like that in the first place, concerning myself with these people and their agendas. But I will get back with y'all. Y'all enjoy this day. Much peace and much love, my family. Oh, Shabbat Shalom. Make sure you get a Sabbath lesson in. Let me go check out the Watchman Reports, which y'all supposed to have been listening to. Peace and love, family. Thanks for joining.